Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Am I the jerk for hiring someone else instead of my unemployed mother-in-law? My husband and I, we have 2 kids who are 3 and 1. Until last month, I had a nanny who spent 6 hours a day with my kids while I work from home, but she decided to stop for personal reasons and it was unexpected. My mother-in-law and I don't have a close relationship because she's the stereotypical mama bear, and it took her a long time to respect our boundaries, but we're currently on good terms though. The first week without a babysitter was a mess, and my husband told his mother that we were suffering until we find a babysitter, and she said she could help since she was dismissed from the service. At the moment, we really needed help and we accepted. It was horrible. She doesn't understand the concept that me being at home working is not the same as being off work, and even though we had several conversations, she would often ask for help or come and talk about random things, or simply wouldn't close the door and my kids came in to talk, among several other interruptions. After a lot of complaining and talking, things got a little bit better, but it was still a huge amount of stress. At the beginning of this week, she said that she could continue to care, but that she would need to receive a salary, as the bills needed to be paid, and she gave her price. The amount was a little below average, but nothing special, and I just felt overwhelmed. I talked to my husband and said I didn't want to do it, because despite it being cheaper, it's very stressful, and she doesn't know how to respect limits, so I would prefer a professional who knows how to respect and isn't part of the family. He complained, saying this would be a way to help his mother before she retires in 3 years, and we could help the family and not someone strange. I said that I was the one who stayed at home with her and interrupted all the time, and he didn't work at home to find out how much his mother disrupts work routines by not respecting limits. He still doesn't agree with me, saying that we should give his mother a chance and that she already has shown herself capable of changing, with a lot of difficulty and time, and that he didn't want her to go through difficulties if we can help. In the end, he relented, but we agreed to pay for the 2 weeks she worked, and we are looking to help out a little bit with her bills. But he's upset with me for this joint decision, and his mother is criticizing me for not helping her and preferring a stranger. The new babysitter will come on Monday. Luckily, she's a former babysitter of mine who is available. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. This is not about family, it's business. You're trying to fill an employment position. This behavior would be unacceptable from an employee you weren't related to, and it's not acceptable from your mother-in-law. If an employee is not a fit for a position, they don't get hired, period. Her presence is creating unnecessary stress and contention. It's better for your relationship with her if you limit the exposure. Also, your partner needs to understand that. If you're not able to get your work done due to said employee, you will have less money to pay them. The relationship needs to be symbiotic. I can empathize with your situation though. I shaved my head, and now my wife cried all night and won't even look at me anymore. I'm 33, male, and I feel like I need to share this with someone. This was the day before yesterday. We had just had a long talk about our financial situation, and I pointed out that we could save some money if I would just shave my head instead of going to the barbershop. She agreed that it would indeed save us some money, and so I decided that I would go about it the same evening since my hair was getting on my nerves. Said and done. We have a trimmer at home, and it took me about 15 minutes. I'm quite good looking and never had any issues with the ladies in any way. But when I got out of the bathroom, feeling quite good about myself, she wouldn't even look at me. I laughed, of course, thought she was just being silly, so I hugged her from behind, took her hand, and put it on my head. She immediately took it back and shivered, whereas I too took a step back. She then started crying and kept on doing so the entire night. At first, I felt devastated that my wife would react this way to something that I was feeling quite good about. We tried talking about it that same night, and she felt ashamed about how she reacted and still couldn't help it. We eventually held each other and fell asleep. The next day, I got home from work, and I noticed she wouldn't look at me. I got more and more annoyed as the evening progressed until I went to bed, alone. The next day, I texted her from work, explaining why I seemed irritated last night, and she still replies that she understands and feels ashamed of her behavior, and I'm not having it. If something as trivial as a haircut can make someone who claims to love you go completely bananas, then that's their problem. I fully understand that people have preferences, but what the heck? I've been married for several years, and she's always been into me in every way. So, does anyone have any suggestions on what I should do next? Update. Some of you are choosing sides, and I want to be clear that shaming her was never my intention. I love her. We have 4 kids together, and sometimes the economy can be a bit tough, but we've managed before and will do so even now. The reason I posted this is I needed to vent something, and I wasn't sure how to get advice moving forward. I needed comfort, just to make sure that I'm not crazy reacting the way I did and feeling ashamed in front of my own wife. We've now talked it through, and she simply says that she finds baldness extremely unattractive and that my change in appearance was so drastic. Thank you again for all of the support. Am I the jerk for making my ex-husband look bad in front of his family? I, 49 female, had an ex-husband named Jake, 53. We have 3 kids together, Kyle, who's 18, Carter, who's 21, and Knox, who's 25. When I was pregnant with Kyle, he was cheating on me with his assistant, Abigail. She was an 18-year-old freshman in college at the time. She got pregnant with Lizzie a year later. When I wouldn't take him back, we got a divorce and he married her. He then had 2 more kids with her. He paid child support, but that was it, and only saw them once a month. However, if one of the kids asked him for something, he'd agree to get it, but he wouldn't answer the kids' phone calls until he figured I had gotten what they needed. He wouldn't show up to any of the kids' sports games or plays, but if his aunts and mom would go to them, then he would come as well. His aunts and mom are big-time lawyers and he needs their approval. His family is somewhat shallow. If someone isn't in a prestigious position, then they'll look down upon them, and any form of gossip is seen as negative and they'll yell at you for making the family look bad. So in front of them, Jake would brag about everything he does for the kids, when in reality, he does nothing. However, my kids see their family vacations, and at first it hurt them, but they began to ignore it. He told them it was because I take them on 2 vacations every year and Lizzie only gets 1. He just tells his family it was because the kids didn't want to go. However, during the Christmas party, Lizzie was talking to her great aunts about the upcoming trip to the Dominican Republic. Kyle then asked what they were talking about. She explained how the family was taking a trip and that their dad said that they had other plans. Kyle explained how she had no plans and neither did her brothers, so they'd love to come along. That's when the problem started. My kids being that far away with their dad never sat right with me, so I went with them on vacation. His wife wasn't happy, but me and his family are still close, so it wasn't weird. So at a dinner, my daughter and Carter go to a very prestigious college, and my oldest is in medical school. So his mom asked what's happening with all of the kids. My daughter then explains how she was chosen for an internship for a tech company, and everyone congratulated her. His mom then asked about Lizzie. My daughter told me that Lizzie had been bragging about his secret, and everyone thinks that she got into her dream college, so his mom was smiling ear to ear, waiting to congratulate her. But Lizzie explains that she's pregnant. Everyone's face fell to the floor, including Jake's. Everyone began to question Jake and Abigail's parenting. Jake then said that it was all on Lizzie. I was tired of the lies and explained how he was never there unless his family was there in order to look good in front of them. They then asked if that was true, and he tried to lie, saying of course not. Then Kyle chimed in, saying that he hadn't even invited them to this vacation and that he lies about everything and he's a crappy dad. Kyle stormed off and me and my sons ran after her. Later, I got a text from Jake thanking me for ruining his family. I didn't even text him back. I do feel bad because it probably wasn't the time or the place. Update. First thing I want to answer is why did I feel the need to go with my kids? I'm best friends with his sister and have been going on trips with them since I was in high school. And I'm always a mom, so I'll never deliberately put my kids in a situation where I can't get to them. So after the situation escalated, I got a call from his wife saying that she couldn't find my husband and that he better not be in my room. I told her he wasn't and she hung up. I then heard a knock on my door. I opened it up and Abigail barged into my room screaming that he was in there. I let her look because I was confused as to what was happening. When she couldn't find him, she just sat on my floor silently crying. The situation was very awkward, so I didn't know what to do, and kicking her out didn't seem right, so I just asked her what was wrong. She explained that over the past 17 years, Jake has really mistreated her and claims that she and Lizzie ruined his happiness. When she was 18, Jake promised that he would leave me for her, but every time she asked when, he would lash out at her. So she got pregnant on purpose to trap him, but Jake tried to pay her to get rid of it. But when I found out and filed for divorce, he thought it was best to just go be with her. But ever since then, he had treated her wrong. And apparently, he was constantly cheating on her. She stayed because she dropped out of college and hadn't worked since she was at his office 18 years ago. She apologized for barging in and just left. I texted Jake that he might want to check on his wife because she seems unpredictable right now. I didn't get a text back, so I assumed everything was okay. So I just went to bed for the night. But the next morning I woke up with a really long text from Jake, so I'll just summarize what he said. He told me how sorry he was for stepping out on our marriage, and that was the biggest mistake he ever made. He wished he was more involved with me and the kids, and he hated seeing Lizzie and Abigail every day. He explained that's why he took on more hours, so he could be away from them, and that subsequently affected our kids. He said Abigail explained how she told me everything and that he was finally happy the truth was out, so he could get away from them. He hoped that after all this time, I could forgive him and we could repair our relationship. I explained to him that we have no need for a relationship. I'm remarried and the kids are grown, so he should focus on fixing their relationship. He didn't text back. I explained to my kids that I'm going to leave early, but they should enjoy the rest of their trip. Kyle didn't want to stay, but the boys were fine staying. So me and Kyle are back home. I texted the boys and asked them how the trip was going, and he explained that everything was a mess and Jake and Abigail weren't talking to each other. So many of these stories make me appreciate how truly boring my own life actually is. Am I wrong for giving my girlfriend an ultimatum between me and her desire to have kids? I, 25 male, and my girlfriend, 22 female, have been dating for about a year and a half. Since we were 24 and 20, so we grew a decent amount together. I love her. I can see her being my wife. So it pains me to have to get to this. When we were first getting into the serious phase of our relationship, we agreed we don't want kids before our late 20s and early 30s. Furthermore, she's going to med school this fall, so she wants to complete that before any consideration. I'm completely okay with that. I do want to be a father, just not in my 20s. I don't have anything against younger parents. Whether that's married or single, good for you. I hope you're happy. I hope you and your kids have a fantastic life. I could not be. I can barely take care of myself sometimes, and I already know how much life changes when you have kids. So the idea of doing that in my mid-20s? I have so many things that I want to do as a young person. I cannot do those things if I have kids. So imagine my shock when my girl, who's still an undergrad, comes up to me and tells me she wants a baby, like ASAP. I was floored, and the reason is her 30-year-old sister welcomed twins, and my girl has been really taking a liking to them. Now she wants kids of her own, like now. When I asked about our previous agreement, she told me, I don't want teenagers running around the house when I'm in my 40s. I even asked about med school, and she said she'd go back in her 30s when the kids are a little older. I just don't know what the heck to say. I've expressed my disagreement to this idea so much already. I don't want to be a father before I'm 30. She keeps telling me that it'll be better to raise them now since I'm young and energetic, as opposed to my mid-30s, which I don't agree with. I'll still be active. She keeps trying to convince me, giving scenarios of me playing catch or tea party makeup with a hypothetical son or a daughter. Like, again, that sounds like something I'd want to do when I'm 35, not now. Bro, I was born in 1999. She was born in 2002. That's both practically yesterday. Her friends are also trying to convince her that she's just in a phase right now and will regret going through with it in the next couple of years. After about weeks of this, I basically gave her an ultimatum last night. Either she waits a few more years or we're done. And that pains me because I really love her and I don't want to lose her. But we're not on the same page right now. She got really upset at the proposal of an ultimatum and has been at a friend's house since. I'm really hoping it's just short-term baby fever. You did right. This is a very tough topic, but very important. There's no way both partners are of different opinions. As painful as it is, you rather go separate ways. Either you'll be unhappy or your partner. You're not wrong. Compatibility on timelines for having kids is incredibly important for long-term relationships. She wants kids much sooner than you do, and if you're not wanting kids yet and she's pushing for one, then ending the relationship is best. Regardless of what actually happens, one of you will most likely end up resenting the other. My husband went to medical school and waited until he graduated residency before we decided to have kids. This is what we both wanted. Sit her down and talk about the implications of having a baby now versus later. Chances are if she gets pregnant and has a baby now, it will be hard, but not impossible, for her to keep up with the demands of medical school and residency. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for not supporting my sister so that she can adopt my brother's son? When my brother, Jake, who's 35, went to jail for a short stint, I, 30 male, was on paper the best candidate to take care of his son, John, who's 7. The issue was that I did not have the qualities needed to be a good parent, and even if I did, my brother's son, to put it lightly, was a very difficult kid. I eventually caved into family pressure and manipulation. However, I did not agree to take in John unconditionally. I made it clear that I could not do this alone and extracted promises of support from many relatives. In hindsight, I was incredibly naive. As soon as the ink was dry, my relatives abandoned me. It was by far the most miserable experience of my life. I was in no way equipped to deal with a kid, much less one with as many issues as John. All of my pleas for help were at best ignored. At worst, I was blamed and shamed. While I'd like to believe that I didn't take my resentment and regret out on John, I most certainly did not support his emotional needs. At best, I was a distant caretaker / ATM. And when Jake got out of jail, I couldn't hand John back to my brother fast enough. Yes, I know that my brother is a terrible parent, but so was I. And Jake, at the least, did not regret having John. The issue is that my brother has gotten in trouble with the law again. Again, I was nominated for guardianship, but I didn't fall on the same trick twice. I stood my ground and burned many bridges in the process. I've been called heartless, selfish, a monster, and more. I've been told that I have a duty to family and so on. My sister, Jane, who's 25, eventually volunteered, but she can barely support herself, never mind a kid. She's asked me for financial assistance, and I refused. While money is no problem for me, I have no obligation. I made it clear that I would not be in her village prior to her adopting John, and furthermore, she was one of the relatives that reneged on her promise to help me when I was in her shoes. I don't care what my relatives think, but when I confided in my friend, she told me that I did owe John, even if I didn't owe my relatives, because I had agreed to be his guardian. I disagreed because I was tricked into it. Am I the jerk? Edit. I guess I didn't make this clear, but I'm not close to John. I was always the uncle that you awkwardly said hi to because your parents forced you to. I also didn't grow any more attached to him during the time that I was his guardian. Edit 2. Jane was 23 when I first became John's guardian, and while I did expect her to help with John, I expected her to be only one villager among the whole village, and she wouldn't even do that. And the reason why I'm so detached towards John is because I regretted and didn't want to be his caretaker in the first place. I'm like an IRL worst-case scenario, regretful parent horror story. Not the jerk. If Jane had stuck to her promise to help you, things might have been different. Bottom line, Jane promised to help and didn't. You have no obligation to help Jane. At least you're not promising to help and then reneging. Not the jerk for not taking John in again. It would be kind of you to offer John some financial support though. Maybe help with his clothing purchases or school supplies, that kind of thing. I wouldn't give cash to your sister, but you could certainly buy things for John, who is, after all, the victim in all of this. Am I the jerk for telling my friend she's ruining her kid's life with the name that she gave her? So I, 21 female, have been friends with Lorraine, who's 22, for 17 years now, and we're really close. She recently gave birth to her daughter, and her husband recently told us the name. They decided to name their daughter Juliette, but it's spelled G-H-I-U-L-I-Y-E-T-T-E. And her middle name is Maria, but it's spelled M-A-H-R-I-Y-A. I thought the spelling was a joke until she told me that they're serious. I told her that with that spelling of a simple but beautiful name, it's going to just ruin her life. She got mad and told me to stop ruining her mood and that I'm being mean. I'm completely honest. The spelling is just bad. Nothing else can explain it. Why ruin such a beautiful name by including letters that don't belong there? I texted her yesterday and I told her that this girl will try to change her name or at least go by her middle name since it's normal. She told me to stop texting her, that I'm a bad friend and I'm being a jerk for making fun of the name. I don't think I am. When I told her that the spelling is just bad, she went crazy. She told me that I'm the worst friend ever and that I would never be able to see her daughter again. After that, her husband sent me an email telling me to stop being so disrespectful. He thinks the spelling is cute and it just makes her unique. Unique, yes, but that's just going to make this girl suffer, and she will probably be bullied for the spelling. I haven't replied, and honestly, I don't think I'm the jerk here, but I thought I'd ask Reddit since y'all are the best judge. So, am I the jerk for telling my friend that the name she gave her daughter is bad and will ruin her life? Update. Alright, I get it. I'm a jerk for going after the name more than once. Sorry for that. I just sent her an apology text for doing it, yet I did write how she should try to look at it from another perspective. I also sent a few screenshots of the comments just for her to see what other people think of it. FYI, I'm supposed to be the godmother. That's why I was extra worried. My bad. Hi, I'm a high school teacher. I'll tell you up front that you're right. Kids with messed up spellings of their names are miserable about 3/4 of the time. It's difficult to spell, people mispronounce them, and we definitely judge the parents. We don't think their kids' names, looking like they just picked 10 random Scrabble tiles out of a box, are cute and unique. We think their parents are stupid and immature, like contestants on an early 2000s reality show like Flavor of Love or something. It's one of the ways we clock parents as potentially difficult. I keep in touch with 3 students who changed their names from their parents' spelling to the actual conventional spelling the minute they turned 18. That kid will be Juliet Maria, spelled correctly, as soon as she possibly can. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. What people don't seem to think about is that these babies will grow up to become adults. First, imagine having to put Juliet whatever on her resume, spelled the way that it is right now. Then some poor soul has to figure out how to pronounce it if they want to pursue her for employment. She will spend literally the rest of her life listening to people struggle to pronounce it, and she will either have to get used to explaining, "It sounds just like Juliet," or she will legally change it. She's setting her kid up for a life of teasing, judgment, and frustration on her part. I would say everyone sucks. You shared your opinion once and you should have left it at that. No need to continually text her about it. That will get you nowhere. Obviously, the parents are jerks for giving her the terrible spelling. The poor girl will never find her name on a magnet or a cup. I actually don't think it will reflect poorly on the kid, but the parents themselves. When people go out of their way to give a perfectly normal name, a bizarre spelling it screams we're of lower intelligence. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is her friend? Please let us know. I'm so thankful that my parents gave me a name like Karen. Yeah, but didn't they put a number 5 somewhere in there when you were born? Silence, you fool! I changed that the moment I turned 18. Karen gets mad that I don't have all 3 buttons done on my work shirt. So for some backstory. Between 2009 and 2012, I worked for CVS, which is a pharmacy chain for any non-American readers. The uniform was a blue and red polo with 3 buttons that you can button and unbutton. I always left the top 2 buttons unbuttoned as I hated having anything around my neck. This will be important later. The cast will be me, the crazy woman who has no hoots to give, Karen, the customer who thinks I should dress like a nun at work, and the manager, who for some reason hated me. So it was a normal day in heck. I was working the front cash like always. I was ringing up a customer and I felt something fall down my shirt, so I tried to shake it out. Mind you, I only pulled it a few inches from my chest and shook. I finished the transaction with the customer in front of me who happened to be male. Now enter Karen. Karen. Excuse me, young lady, but you should not be trying to flaunt your chest in front of customers like that. Me. I am sorry, but I was not trying to flaunt anything. I felt something fall down my shirt and I was trying to shake it out. Well, you should have all 3 buttons buttoned on your shirt anyway. You're one slip away from being exposed. Important detail. I could have left all the buttons undone, and I would not have been one slip away from a Janet Jackson Super Bowl moment. Me. Ma'am, I can assure you, I am in fact not one slip away from being exposed. Karen. It most certainly is, and I want to speak to your manager about how inappropriately dressed you are. Me. Okay, ma'am, she is outside on her break. Let me go grab her. Thinking to myself, well, manager is going to be mad. Me. Manager, I have a customer requesting to speak to you. Manager. Is it something you can handle? Me. No, I guess she has an issue with how I'm dressed. Manager. Tell her I'll be there in a minute. Me. Okay. I return into the store. Me. Manager will be with you in a moment, ma'am. Manager tells Karen. I am the manager on duty. How can I help you? Karen to the manager. Yes, this young lady was trying to flaunt to a customer, and when he showed no interest, she tried to say she felt something fall down her shirt, and she was trying to get it out. Plus, she should have all 3 buttons buttoned on her shirt. She looks like a hussy. Manager to me. Is this true, OP? Me. No, the only part that is that I felt something fall down my shirt and I went to shake it out. Plus, the whole time I have worked here, I've always worn my shirt like this, and no one has complained until now. Manager tells Karen, I'm sorry, Karen. I'll have a talk with OP about her doing what she did, and rest assured, her actions will have consequences. Karen tells the manager, while looking at me smugly. I am glad to hear that. Having people like her working for this store makes the store look bad. I hand Karen her change and she leaves. Once she leaves, manager tells me, OP, button all 3 buttons, and I will be talking to the store manager about this. I comply with manager, and it's all over. Jerk manager did in fact talk to the store manager, but nothing ever came of it. I ended up quitting a year later due to some stuff jerk manager did that became the straw that broke the camel's back. Entitled parents get offended at Sam's Club. I swear, what's going on right now is just awakening all the Karens and Chads. I think I've run into more entitled folks, including parents, now more than ever. Today was a fun interaction. For context, I am still working. I currently work with my mother in agriculture, which is considered essential. We've been remodeling an office due to damage. We also travel and pick up industrial parts to repair machines with. So today, this lovely day, our coffee maker shorts out. We need a new coffee maker. So we get the card from our boss and head out to Sam's Club to replace the coffee maker. We get there and there is a line. Oh, they're at capacity. We get in the long line. For further context, I would always stand in lines sideways with my shoulders facing the person in front and the person behind. This is because I startle easily and I'm not okay with people directly behind me when I can't see them. Also helps keep people behind you from standing too close to you. Anyways, after a few minutes of standing, a family comes up behind us. The family consists of entitled dad, entitled mom, and 4 kids. The kids are all between the ages of 2 and 6. Of course, I see them, but choose to ignore them and continue talking with my mom. They start their BS by trying to cut in line. Every time they tried, I would either swing my leg out at them or start stepping in their way. After 5 minutes, they stop, but it doesn't end there. I mostly ignore them again, still talking with my mom. Both of us were generally grumbly, not due to the line, but mostly due to the general work frustrations. First a leaky sink, and now a coffee maker that decided to blow out. Here's the thing though, we both have mouths that can make a sailor blush, and we don't hold back. Although we don't talk extensively loud. The only people that would even hear us is folks that are under 6 feet away from us, which this family keeps teetering in and out from. So I was talking about how frustrated I was with this piece of crap sink, and how the coffee maker blowing out just really shows how much the world is specifically trying to get us. Before my mom can even let out a chuckle, the entitled dad said something to the effect of, "Did your mom never spank you for using that language?" I don't remember exactly, but I know a mother was brought up because my mom immediately whipped back saying, "They're an adult." I fully look over to the family and see entitled dad holding a sleeping toddler and the entitled mom actually covering one of the kids' ears and the other covering their own. I just kind of look and snort. I thought it was dramatic. Entitled dad apparently didn't like that. He asked me if I thought it was funny to be corrupting other people's kids. My mom didn't say anything, but kept an eye out to be sure they didn't try anything. I was already a bit grumpy, so I was a bit bolder than usual. So I just flatly told them, "Yes, because you wouldn't even be able to hear what I was saying if you actually stayed 6 feet from me." Entitled mom spoke up this time. She said something about not being sick, and her kids were getting hot. It was 60 degrees, lady. Summers get in the 90s. I told them that I could be sick, and that them being so close to me and policing how I speak isn't going to get them into the store any faster. My mom, being, well, mom, chimes in, saying that if it starts raining, forget this crap. Entitled dad replies with an, "Oh my god," and asks if we have any respect for people. Mom says, "Heck no. Respect is earned, and you can't even respect our darn space." We were a lot closer to the entrance then, but I guess shopping with disrespectful people wasn't worth it to them, and they ended up just leaving altogether. Bit of a blessing, but also a bummer. Would like to see how a talk to the manager would have went. How Karen got banned from my restaurant. For context, I am a 17-year-old male working for my local McDonald's in the Midwestern USA. This happened last night. We have a regular, the Karen in this story, who always comes through our drive-thru and orders 2 large iced teas and a large Colombian coffee. In case you aren't familiar, some McDonald's stores sell a Colombian brew coffee which has a much stronger flavor, way more of a kick to it, just as bitter as a Karen's soul. How fitting. Whenever there is an order which takes 3 or more drinks, we assume that they will want a drink tray because it makes things work better and quicker for us. However, Karen does not want a drink tray. In fact, you'd think she's allergic to them. If you try to give her one, she snaps at you and tries to boss you around. My coworker, who I'll call Jemima, didn't know about her aversion to drink trays because she normally works different shifts and had never dealt with her before. She handed her drinks out on a tray, and Karen took the drink tray and threw it at her, frisbeed it right back into the window. Jemima was shaken, naturally, and told the manager what happened. Last night, Karen came through the drive-thru again. This time, Jemima was at the first window, where you pay for your food. She got a manager, and not just any manager, our general manager, who is the highest person on the ladder in our store. The next level is the regional manager, who takes care of the 8 stores owned by our franchise. Happened to be right there. He knew what happened. He sold Karen her coffees, but only after making it clear that she was not allowed to come back after what she did. If she comes back, not only will we ban her from all 8 stores, all the McDonald's stores in our area are owned by the same family, so she will almost certainly have to drive at least 40 minutes or something to get to a McDonald's she's allowed to go to. But we will also call the cops on her for trespassing. She got to my window and said, "I don't want a drink tray." And I just said, "I know that," as sassily as my thoroughly non-sassy personality would allow. Update. She came back today. The official policy about what to do about her hadn't gotten around to all of the managers yet, but one of the managers there tonight sent the GM a message to let him know she came by. Hopefully by the next time she comes back, everybody knows about it and we can call the authorities on a Karen. Karen was my personal finance teacher. Hi, Mr. Reddit. I was enjoying some of your stories this morning and happened upon some entitled teacher stories. All of a sudden, I was brought back to memories of an entitled personal finance teacher I had in high school. I was the silent kid who didn't have many friends and sat in the back of the room. Luckily, I had one friend in this class with me. He too was one of the quiet ones. We both took machine shop and were in the Skills USA program. Keep that in mind for later. Anyway, now to describe the teacher. She was in her late 30s, 4'11" with a short Karen haircut. She was loud and ruled any student who wasn't one of her pets with an iron fist. Her pets sat at the front of the room and were the group of girls who constantly stroked her ego. Anytime one of us peasants had an issue with the subject, she'd basically say, "Figure it out on your own. I'm only going to teach things to you once because they won't spend this much time on things when you're in college." If you happened to miss a day of her class, "Here's what you missed yesterday. Now get to it," I would respond with, "But Mrs. Blank," then get interrupted with, "No excuses. Get someone to help you figure it out." Most of the time, my friend would help me. When we would tell her we were tired, we'd get to hear the story of when she worked her way through college. "I was in class during the day and worked security at night and only slept on the weekends. You all have no excuses to be tired." We had to endure stories about how perfect her 2 kids were and how she never let her kids watch or listen to any of that vile stuff on the TV. She also degraded her husband with things like, "My husband knows his place. I run my house." The poor man eventually had the courage to divorce her years later. Now to the main story. As I said, my friend and I were in Machine Shop and Skills USA as well. For those of you who don't know, the Skills USA is a vocational club. The Skills USA Club had planned an end-of-the-year field trip to several factories and shops across the area. The head of the vocational program told us all schoolwork missed for that day wouldn't count against us. We took our trip, and when my friend and I returned the next day, we were greeted with, "Here is what you missed yesterday. Figure it out," and slammed the packets on our desk. I said, "But Mrs. Blank, we were told our work for yesterday didn't count against us." "Tea and rails and tails. I don't care what you were told. Do the work or take a 0. Of course, I refused, and as the end of May approached, the school put on pep rallies and stuff. But the one rule was you couldn't attend if you had any 0 grades on anything. Well, my buddy and I still had that big fat 0 that wasn't supposed to count against us. So on the day of the pep rally, we went to the head of the vocational department, our shop teacher, with this issue. We pleaded our case to him and told him how she had treated us over being in the technical program. Oh, and by the way, she wasn't fond of people who didn't plan on going to university. So, like a cape-wearing superhero, our shop teacher said, "Don't worry, boys, I got you," as he picked up his in-room phone and dialed her extension. "Yes, Mrs. Blank, this is shop teacher. I have TN Rails and Tails and his friend in my room. They're saying they have zeros on work that wasn't supposed to count against them due to our vocational field trip." At this point, you could hear her screech from our end of the phone, let alone across the whole school. "Yes, they have zeros, and I don't care what you say. Those boys won't be attending the pep rally unless I have their completed work in my hand. My class is more important than yours. You and those boys are rednecks and can go forget yourselves." Shop teacher hung up the phone and with a sigh said, "What a bee." Then he proceeded to say, "Mrs. Blank thinks I'm some redneck, but what she doesn't know is I run my own side business as well, and that packet is on business management, correct?" "Yes, sir," we responded. "Go get your packets. We're about to kick her butt with your work." Needless to say, we did A+ work on our packets. We proceeded to her room to turn them in. She smirked at us as we handed them to her and began grading them in front of us. That smirk turned to a scowl. "Go to your stupid pep rally. You pass. And don't take another one of my classes. I don't wish to see either of you again." After that, I would still see her from time to time, and she gave me a dirty look every chance she got. That's how I kicked an entitled, arrogant teacher's butt with a pencil. Entitled mom thinks she can ignore hotel policy and complains when her power is shut off for non-payment. I work in the complaint department of a national hotel chain. I deal with entitlement on a daily basis and get my fair share of Karens and Richards on a daily basis. If I can go a single day without having to deal with entitled people, it's a sign that I'm going to win the lottery. The worst part is when they have legitimate issues, like they couldn't get checked in because the hotel was overbooked, but the front desk didn't cancel a reservation and they got charged a no-show fee. These instances are usually an easy fix. First, let me confirm the charge and submit a case for you, and most general managers are pretty good about refunding them. But the entitled ones always act like we did it on purpose and will refuse to refund them. So they start yelling about how it's illegal for us to charge them. I understand their frustration, but them yelling at me won't solve anything. They're basically just making it harder to get their money back. Now this particular day, I did not sleep well the night before and had quite the migraine. I had just gotten off the phone with one of the Richards described above, and it was not helping me to feel better. Me. "Thank you for calling CD. My name is Matsuyo. Can I get your first and last name, please?" Karen. "Finally. I've been on hold forever." Me. "I'm sorry about the wait. We've been busy with the GM called me earlier, but I'm at work so I couldn't talk. I just got a call from my daughter and they turned the power off in our room. She has to sit in the hallway just to get her phone charged. You need to look into this hotel. How dare they turn the power off on a bunch of kids? They said I don't even have a reservation, which is BS. My sister booked the room and I paid for it." I won't go into the full conversation, but it was essentially 10 minutes of her yelling and gripping before I could even get her name. Fortunately, she had a pretty uncommon last name, so it was easy to find her reservation. Normally, I need to ask for the city and state to narrow it down, but it's a good thing her name was so uncommon or I would have never found it. Every time I would try to say anything, she would interrupt me. While listening to her rant, I found the culprit. She was rebooking 2 days at a time through a third-party company. Anyone who has ever worked for a hotel knows that third-party reservations are the worst to deal with and can cause all sorts of problems. But that wasn't the cause of the issue this time. Oh no, she hadn't been checked in the hotel for 2 whole days. Basically, she arrived on Monday and paid for Monday and Tuesday, meaning that checkout is Wednesday. She then rebooked the room to continue her stay, but she made it for Thursday instead. Today was Friday, and the fact that it showed late cancel told me she never checked into it and was probably charged a no-show fee. She also had another reservation for today that was ready to get checked into. This meant that she had been at the hotel without a reservation for 2 days. Now, this would have been an easy fix had she not neglected to go down to the front desk to switch reservations. They would have seen that she was booked for the wrong day, set her up with another reservation for the night, and she would just have to repeat the next day. Finally, I got a chance to speak and started to advise her. She kept interrupting to yell at me, so it took me many attempts to get all the information out. Karen: "That's not true. I don't have to check in if I'm already at the hotel." A few more interruptions later, and I finally managed to get it out. Me: "Ma'am, since you rebooked the room, you have to go to the front desk to check out of the old reservation and check into the new one. Otherwise, they're going to ask you to leave." "Is it your policy to turn the power off on a bunch of kids?" That was clearly a rhetorical question because she did not allow me to answer. At this point, I'm so done with this lady. I turn my mic off, flip off my phone, and start shouting. I'm working from home, so I can be as loud as I want without having to worry about disturbing my neighbors. It's such a great stress reliever. Finally, I'm able to get it out that I would like to submit a case for her, but am barely able to tell her that I need her phone number. Finally, she got fed up with dealing with me herself and handed me off to someone else. Other person: "Hello?" Me: "Hi, I'd like to create a case. Can I get the best phone number to reach you at?" Silence. Me: "Hello?" I look at my phone and see that the call has ended. I am relieved that I don't have to deal with Karen anymore, but now I have to deal with the nightmare of putting her case together. I just barely have enough to submit anything. Had I not been able to find the reservation on my own, I wouldn't have even known what hotel she was at. Can't submit a case without that. I was so done with her that I just did not care that she was literally making it impossible for anyone to do anything for her. Since I never got around to pulling up her receipt for the canceled Thursday reservation, I couldn't note if she had been charged a no-show fee or not. There was a phone number on her reservation, but for all I know, it wasn't even hers, so I couldn't use it without verifying it with her first. After all, I've seen third-party reservations all the time where all the guests' information is replaced by the company's. And to top it all off, I hadn't even been able to advise the callback. We normally advise 1 to 2 days for a callback, which most people are okay with, but I'm sure Karen would have demanded a callback right that minute, and then demanded my supervisor when I told her I couldn't do it. I'm way too tired to deal with this crap. Woman wants to talk to manager that doesn't work for bus company. We've got me, we've got the lady, we've got the site manager, and my manager. A bit of backstory. I work for a security company. The places we patrol are sites that pay the company I work for, and they have 1 or 2 security officers patrol the area and have certain information available at times. I was working at a bus company that drives all around the country while taking people wherever they pay to go. I'm supposed to know when buses depart, when buses arrive, and where the smoking areas are. Other than that, my duties are to patrol the property and make sure no homeless people are sleeping on the property, and to make sure everyone has a ticket, and if they don't, I have to kick them off the property. My shift was from 11 at night till 7 in the morning. Since I'm awake for 17 hours a day, my face becomes less than pleasant, and I get a serious mean look, even though I just don't have the energy to keep a neutral face so early in the morning. Around 3 a.m., a woman waiting for her bus came up to me while I was writing in my daily log. Lady: "Do you know if the vending machine takes 5s? I learned my lesson with vending machines years ago and have never used the ones on site, so I didn't actually know. Me: "No, I'm sorry, but if you ask site manager at the desk, she can tell you." What? You should know this. That's unprofessional. Me: "I only know what I need to know. I stopped using vending machines a while back." Lady: "What's that supposed to mean? Are you calling me fat?" The lady was a little heavy, but I wouldn't say fat. Me: "Ma'am, I didn't say that. I just don't personally trust—" "Forget you. And here I thought maybe a millennial would actually have some darn manners." At this point, I stand up and step up as security. Me: "Ma'am, if you don't calm down, you are going to have to leave the property." "You aren't going to lay a finger on me, you little jerk." "I won't need to. This is a federal property, so you will be taking it up with the authorities if you don't calm down." "I want to see your manager." "You want to see my manager?" "What, are you deaf too?" "Yes." At this point, site manager, who was in the back doing paperwork, came out from the commotion. Site manager: "Is there a problem?" Lady: "I want this man fired at this very moment. He insulted my weight and tried to assault me." One of the passengers that was still awake backed me up and said what was really happening. Site manager: "Ma'am, I can't fire him. He doesn't work for our bus company." Lady was speechless and confused. Me: "Ma'am, she isn't my manager. My manager is somewhere in the city right now." Site manager: "He's doing his job to this company's standards, so I have no need to notify his manager." I demand you call his manager. Me. Fine, no problem. I pull out a radio that stays on site, which we use to report incidents to our managers, big and small. Me. This is OP at our site. Come in, manager. Manager. This is manager, go ahead. Me. We have a lady causing a disturbance and she wants to talk to you because she has a complaint about me. Manager. Is she nearby? Me. Right in front of me. My manager. Ma'am, if you don't settle down, OP is authorized by that company to kick you off the property and you will have to pay a fee to reschedule your ticket. If you refuse to leave, the police will be involved. OP, make sure you write an incident report on this when it's all said and done. He hung up and left the lady baffled. Lady, I won't accept this. Let me talk to him. She reached for the radio and I pulled back. Me, ma'am, this is your last warning. You've been disturbing the other passengers. Everyone was awake now and upset, twisting my words and actions, and then tried taking my company property from my possession. Sit down, shut up, or get the heck out, or you will not get on your bus. Don't! Shut up and get the heck out. Grab your stuff and get off the property before I involve the police. No, please, I need to be on this bus. Then sit down, and I don't want to hear another word from you for the rest of the night. She would have been better off changing bus schedules at that point. The bus driver told me a few days later that every angry person on that bus was jamming music and talking loudly because she was trying to sleep. I was really trying to be patient with her, but I gave her too many chances to calm down, and I had to deal with too many people that wanted to fight me throughout the night to be any more patient with her. Entitled grandmother tried to take my puppy right out of my arms. Never thought I would have something to add to this subreddit. Well, boy, I was wrong. So for a little bit of backstory, a few days ago I had to take my adorable 10-week-old German Shepherd puppy to the vet for her second round of puppy shots. She's super friendly and loves people and was super excited and was giddy the whole time. Afterward, I took her to a nearby park to take her for a walk because she was definitely on the nice list due to her behavior at the vet. My floppy-eared Floof and I were strolling past, making sure to avoid as many people as possible because, you know, sickness. It was then when I had the following encounter. Let's meet the cast. We've got me. We've got Polite Kid. We've got Entitled Grandmother. Floof and I pass Entitled Grandma and Polite Kid on the walking trail. Polite Kid. Aw, cute puppy. Can I please pet it really quick? Me. Oh, sure. I don't see why not. I tell the kid, who looks to be around 10ish, her name, breed, etc. Polite Kid. Okay, thank you. It was nice meeting you, Floof. Please note the dog's name isn't actually Floof. It's Sadie. I continue walking Floof with no problems when 2 seconds later, excuse me? That is a dangerous breed. He could hurt someone. That's an attack dog, and he tried to bite my grandson. Me. Oh no, ma'am. I'm sorry, but you must be Miss... That dog tried to hurt my grandson. While Floof sits on the ground with her tail wagging at my feet. Floof has then decided that because we were talking, these must be new friends, and takes a step closer and sniffs Entitled Grandma's shoes. Cue the Entitled Grandma letting out a squeal so obnoxious it makes the Wilhelm scream sound like a kid's birthday party. Entitled Grandma. OMG! Me, getting obviously annoyed, picks up dog and walks away. Entitled Grandma. No, you stay right here. Grabs the leash and plants her feet. This lady then proceeds to try and tear the puppy out of my arms, yelling crap about how she's calling animal control to put down this raging beast. Finally, the Polite Kid steps in and tells his grandma to back down and how it's just a puppy who didn't do anything. She begrudgingly lets go with steam coming out of her ears. The Polite Kid mutters under his breath how she always does this, gives me an apologetic look before ushering his grandma away. I know this is tame for some of the other crap on here, but still shook me that there are actual people out in the world like that. I can't even imagine being that poor kid. This will probably get buried, but that was my contribution to this subreddit. Entitled Mom harasses me at Disney World. Backstory. My parents took me, male, 10 at the time, to Disney World for my 10th birthday in 2013. I'm also autistic, and it's noticeable. It was especially obvious when I was younger, even more so because I was incredibly excited to be at Disney. Now, when you're at the Disney parks around your birthday, they give you this big old button that says, "It's my birthday," along with a space where the cast member writes your name. I was very proud of my button and proudly wore it over my whole trip. On this particular day, my actual birthday, my parents and I were in the Magic Kingdom. We were around Tomorrowland, just about to enter the Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters. I was carrying a Stitch plush I had gotten on the first day of the trip, and there's these two little kids around my age at the time, a boy and a girl, Nice Kid 1 and Nice Kid 2, with their mom, entitled Mom, who noticed my plush. They got their mother's attention saying, "Mommy, Mommy, look, he has a Stitch." Their mother smiled at them and at me, and then she noticed my button and said, "Happy birthday, young man." Nice Kid 1 and Nice Kid 2 also saw it and also happily told me happy birthday. I was excited that they noticed, and I grinned and thanked them as I happily flipped my hands around a bit, something I do when I'm excited. Nice Kid 1 and Nice Kid 2 didn't think anything of it, but entitled Mom's face scrunched up as if I had just said something I shouldn't be saying. "What's wrong with you?" Entitled Mom asked rudely. I didn't hear that, but my parents did. My dad asked her what she'd just said. "Well, I don't want him doing that around my kids," Entitled Mom said, disgusted. "He did nothing wrong," my dad said. "I do not want my kids catching that and acting like him," Entitled Mom spat. Me and Nice Kid 1 and Nice Kid 2 were not paying attention to this at all. We were too busy happily discussing Stitch. I was having an awesome time talking with my two new friends when Entitled Mom grabbed their hands and rushed them into the queue for Buzz Lightyear before we could get there. "We deserve to go first after what your kid just did," Entitled Mom smugly stated. However, when you're autistic at Disney, you get a special pass to skip queues. So of course, we walk right on past Entitled Mom towards the Fast Pass queue attendant, who directs us on what to do. She's throwing a fit about us cutting the line as my dad presents the pass to the attendant, and Entitled Mom totally shuts up seeing the actual pass. This was before it was all digital. Talk about justice. The funny part is that if she had bothered to look at the other pins on my backpack, she'd have known from the get-go that I was autistic, as I have a couple buttons on there in case I get separated from my parents. Also, at this time, I thought Entitled Mom was just mad we skipped the line. I had no idea she was all ableist beforehand. Again, me and Nice Kid 1 and 2 were having a nice, happy kid conversation, so this didn't ruin my day at all. Side note, a lot of the park guests and cast members saw my button and I flapped my hands every time. Sure, I got a few raised eyebrows, but nobody said anything, especially not as blatantly rude as Entitled Mom. Even the characters went out of their way to show their excitement. This was an awesome trip. I hope Nice Kid 1 and Nice Kid 2 are doing well, and I still sleep with that Stitch plush every night. Speaking of Disney World, where would you rather go? Disney World or Universal Studios? Please let me know. Coworker says the way I dress makes her self-conscious. I am an essential worker. I work in a factory and I wear a uniform, but I still come in dressed how I normally dress. I love to wear skirts and decorative tights under my ripped jeans, bodysuits, crop tops, etc. I'm also pretty slim and petite. So one of my coworkers is the same age as me, 20, and she's a bit on the curvier side. She always comes in sweatpants and baggy sweaters. I've seen her outside of work before, and she does put effort in her appearance when she wants to. One day, we were changing back into our normal clothes when I caught her staring at me. I asked her if everything was okay, and she just shrugged and walked out without saying anything. So I ordered this cute yellow plaid skirt, and I decided to wear it to work. Walking in, I saw my coworker sitting in the break room talking to some other people. I go over to the table I usually sit at and start chatting with some coworkers while I put my stuff in its place. One of the guys is this man in his 40s with a daughter close to my age. He said that he liked my skirt and might get one for his kid. This caught her attention, and she asked why he would allow his daughter to dress like this. This made people stop and stare at her. When she realized what she said, she just got up and walked out of the break room into the locker room. Upset, I followed her in and just saw her changing into her uniform. I asked her, "Why would you say something like that?" And all she said is, "I have no reason to explain myself to you." I told her, "Considering you were talking about me, I think you do." She huffed and said that I'm obviously trying to get people to look at me and expect that every girl has to dress like this, that I was begging for attention, and how I made her self-conscious. First off, I don't dress for other people. I dress for myself. I basically flipped it on her by saying, "Well, I don't like the way you dress, because you're making people think that girls shouldn't take pride in the way they look." She says, "I don't give a crap what people think about me," which I reply with, "Then why do you care so much about how I dress?" Her response is, "Because no normal person dresses like that. You look stupid. People think you're a freak." She leaves the locker room all smug as if she just won this fight, but because of her little outburst in the break room, people started giving her the side eye. She noticed this and now blames me for making people think she's a bad person. Entitled couple steals a cat, ends up with bills costing more than the cat itself. Cast. We've got aunt, uncle, the vet. We've got the entitled couple, entitled woman and entitled man. We've got the daughter of the entitled couple and her kids. This started 4 years ago when my aunt and uncle adopted 2 cats. One is very quiet and sleeps a lot. He doesn't really go too far from the house. The other cat is the exact opposite. He goes out loads. He only stays in for food and sleep and has an appetite all the time. One day, the cat didn't come home for a week. Okay, suspicious, but definitely not strange for a cat. Then it happens again and again. By now, my aunt is getting worried and buys a cat tracker. It turns out that the cat was spending his time in a nearby house. At this point, my uncle went around to talk to them about it. Instantly, they denied everything. They didn't encourage the cat or feed it or anything. Suspicious. It becomes more apparent over the next couple of months they weren't telling the truth. The cat is getting fatter and fatter until one day on a visit to the vets, he is placed on a list for at-risk animals. By now, my aunt is angry, and to be fair, I can see why. These people were denying that they had ever fed the cat at all, whilst causing it health problems that could cost thousands in vet bills. This all boiled down to what can only be described as one of the most entitled acts I have ever heard. At a family gathering, the entitled couple's daughter is just leaving when she spots the cat and decides that it is now hers. She just picks it up and drove it back home, 50 miles back home. Fortunately for us, there were some plumbers doing work in the street who watched her take the cat. At first, they had no idea whose cat it was, but when my uncle started asking around to see if anyone had seen it, they told him. We were astonished that they had the audacity to do that. And what's more, they claimed it was their cat they had lost. My uncle was friends with someone who knew entitled couple's daughter quite well and confirmed that they had lost a ginger cat who was quite old. The cat they had taken was black. They lost their cat over a year before that. How can people be so stupid? This is where my aunt calls in backup, legal backup. In court, entitled couple are given a cease and desist as well as bills for healthcare issues the cat had during his time at their house. Entitled couple's daughter is told to give back the cat and is also given a community service project to complete on animal welfare. Oh, the irony. All went well. But wait, the entitlement continues. When entitled couple's daughter brought the cat back to my aunt, she was angry. She virtually threw the cat to my aunt and started screaming and ranting with the whole street watching. Entitled couple's daughter. Me and my kids deserve this cat more. Aunt. Why don't you just buy one? Entitled couple's daughter completely ignored this. My kids are so sad. You should at least pay for a new cat for us. Aunt. Sorry, are you off your head? Entitled couple's daughter screams. My aunt. Please leave. Entitled couple's daughter screams more. Then as entitled couple's daughter drives away, she gives my aunt a very mean gesture and my aunt just gives her a friendly wave. Your kid never answered my kid's phone calls. Give me his phone now. Background. My entire school district has been shut down because of what's going on, which means no sports. This kid on my baseball team has wanted to be my friend for about a year now, but he's what you would call the kid who eats paste in the back of the room. Therefore, many people have had the wrong idea about him. This happened about 3 days ago. On to the story. We've got me, we've got entitled dad, entitled kid, entitled mom, we've got my father and my mother. My family has always been good friends with entitled kid's parents ever since entitled kid and I were in 4th grade. Entitled kid's parents made me give him my phone number so we can get to become good buddies. Weird, but okay. One day, entitled kid called me on my phone, but I never answered it. He called about 7 more times, but to no answer on my side. Then I hear dad's phone ring. This is how it went down. Dad. Hello? Entitled dad. Hello. This is entitled dad calling you about your son, OP. He has never answered my sweet angel's calls. Dad. Okay, so? OP has been asleep for a while now. He knows how annoying entitled kid is to me, so he's trying to back me up. Entitled dad. Okay, that isn't an excuse to not answer entitled kid's phone calls. Dad. His phone is set on silent so he doesn't get woken up at night. Entitled dad. Oh, is that so? Yes, that is correct. Well, if OP isn't going to use his phone properly, then I think my kid should have it. Dad. What? Entitled Dad. Yes, you heard me. Entitled Kid has been such a good kid, and he deserves a new phone. I have an iPhone 11 Pro, and he has a Samsung S5, I think. Dad, your kid does not get OP's phone. He paid his own money for that, and I am also paying for the bills that come with it. Entitled Mom comes on phone now. My kid deserves that phone more than your disgusting kid. Me. What did she just call me? Dad. How dare you call OP that? You will no longer have our kid at the baseball games anymore. Entitled Dad is the coach. My mom. And OP will not contact your kid ever again. Entitled Mom and Entitled Dad all together. We don't care. My mom. Good then. Go to heck. All of you. Yes, you could actually hear the smile on her face. And that's it. We never contacted that family again, and now each time I will see Entitled Kid in the halls, I tell him how much of a jerk him and his family are, and it's great. Always make sure the customer knows if you're teasing. This happened about 4 years ago, but I didn't really know about this sub until now. Spent the summer scanning and bagging groceries, absolutely hated it, but my coping mechanism was trying to have a sense of humor about everything. No 10 out of 10 stand-up routines or anything, but just completely committing to every corny joke customers will use like, must be free, and going with it. Anyways, one day I get this tall, older black gentleman in my line. Normally his color is irrelevant, but I think it may have played a part in his reaction to what I said. Anyways, things started off fine, making small talk. He's a very low energy man, talks very quietly and smoothly, and seemed very down to earth. I asked him how he was doing, and he said something along the lines of, oh, you know, surviving, getting by one day at a time. Super friendly, practically to a fault. He made the mistake of trying to help me by moving items from the belt over the bags that he had bought. Only I hadn't scanned those items yet. Customers do this sometimes, and I've done it as a customer before. It's a brain fart moment, and as the cashier, I will often chuckle and say, nice try, as they're returning the items back to me. It always gets a laugh from the customer, and life goes on. So the man apologized when he realized what he was doing, and I did the usual, haha, nice try there. And at this point, I was running very much on autopilot. I had my customer service smile on my face while I was punching in buttons on the register. He was talking to me in his same low volume, seemingly relaxed voice, and I wasn't exactly listening, but he was politely nodding along. After a while, it starts feeling like he's talked for a long time without me saying anything. I tune back into what he's talking to me about, and that's when it dawns on me that I've upset him. He was spending the last 30 seconds saying how I had disrespected him by assuming that he's a thief, and how that is not the way you treat a customer if you want to keep your job. And meanwhile, I've been grinning like a sneering jerk the whole time he's saying this to me. At this point, I'm kind of panicked. I should have said, sir, I apologize. I meant it as a joke and it was in poor taste. It wasn't my intention to offend you, and I hope you can pardon me. But I had frozen up, and instead just was awkwardly silent as he reluctantly handed me a 20. He was saying something a little louder, but I was nervous and was trying to wrap up the transaction as fast as possible. As soon as I punched in $20 on the machine and opened the till, it finally hit me what he was saying. I have the change. Too late. I handed him back a handful of coins as he very audibly groaned. I couldn't even make eye contact, I was so embarrassed. I meekly wished him a nice day and watched as he walked over and got in line with customer service. It honestly sunk my spirits and still haunts me to this day. He was this kind man who, from his perspective, had to deal with some kid accusing him of trying to steal from the store, who then was sneering and ignoring him as he expressed his offense, and as a little last forget you, gave him loose coins to deal with, even though he had the change readily available. I never saw him again. My coworkers and I are the reason entitled mom's son has to eat an unhealthy diet and cannot eat sandwiches. I was reading these stories when I was suddenly reminded of an incident where I was a cashier at a grocery store. This was during the most recent recall when all romaine lettuce was called back and literally no one was getting it. This lady came in, gripping her kid by the forearm, and approached my register as if my customer wasn't there. She spoke over them and very flatly said, "I'd like to speak to your manager." I said something like, "No problem, I'll call him for you." I called the manager and continued to help my line of customers check out. When there was no one left, I was just kind of sitting there, twiddling my thumbs. Then I heard a loud and frustrated voice say, I just don't understand the problem. I looked over and realized it was the lady talking to my manager. He looked genuinely confused. Ma'am, no one is selling romaine right now because…
Yes, I know. That is why. I want the number to your distributor.
It clicked for me. Does this woman think that we're the ones refusing to sell lettuce? He said, Ma'am, I can't help you with that. I don't know what to say. She looked him dead in the eye, and with 100% conviction, she said,
That's fine. Your owner will hear from me.
My manager just said, Okay, ma'am, is there anything else I can help you with? She just looked him up and down really quick and walked away. I heard from the produce people during closing that she had asked them if they kept any in their bag. According to them, we were ruining her and her kids' health by not letting them get their daily intake of vegetables. The guy told her that we had full stock of plenty other vegetables when she said,
Well, what else am I supposed to put on my sandwiches?
Then she complained to them about how she won't be able to feed her son sandwiches until she can get romaine lettuce. Then the deli manager from the deli department heard us talking and asked if we were talking about the woman who was literally dragging her kid by the arm. She told us about how lettuce ladies stood at the counter and talked everyone's ear off. Something about how we don't know how to do our jobs. It's ridiculous that no one has romaine lettuce. It's irresponsible that we're not carrying enough vegetables to maintain a healthy diet for her kid. How could we possibly expect her to feed such a kid canned vegetables, etc.? The deli manager made the mistake of trying to explain why we didn't have romaine lettuce, which resulted in more complaining and whining. God, do I have so many stories from working at this store. You should land the plane better. My dad is a pilot for a large Canadian airline. On this day, last year, he was flying to a smaller airport that had a short runway. This runway can be challenging for an aircraft such as the Boeing 737, which he was flying. It's definitely not an airport where you can easily have a smooth landing. On with the story. When he tried to bring the nose up to touchdown, known as a flare, he floated a bit far down on the runway and was running out of room in the landing zone. He decided instead of going around, he landed, rather firmly putting it on the ground. Fast forward to parking. My dad and his captain were shutting down the aircraft when a Karen who was disembarking asked the flight attendant if she could have a word with the pilot. She was let in with her son, who looked to be around 7. The kid was fairly nice and asking questions like what the yoke, control stick, was for, and all the levers and buttons, until Karen blurted out,
How did you even pass flight school?
Then the dialogue goes as follows. We've got Karen, we've got the nice kid, and we've got my dad. Dad, what do you mean, ma'am?
Don't you know how to land a plane properly? That was way too hard, and my son could have done better.
Dad, the runway is fairly short at this airport, and I didn't want to make anyone late by going around, so he gets cut off.
Don't put me and my son's lives at risk by being stupid.
As if there aren't a whole 180 other people on the plane. Dad, ma'am, are we all alive?
Yeah?
Are you injured?
My kid is probably forever scarred from this experience.
Doesn't seem like it. Are you okay, bud?
Yeah, I love airplanes.
See? He's fine. Now you guys have a nice day. I have work to do.
Okay, let's go, Mommy.
The Karen just blankly stared at my dad until Nice Kid was off the plane. She followed, but didn't leave without a word.
If you're my pilot again, I'll make you let my son fly.
My dad and his captain both chuckled after that. The shift I thought I was getting fired. So this story takes place many years ago, back when I was in college and waiting tables at a chain restaurant known for their burgers, referred to by our staff as the Dirty Bird. This was years ago, early 2000s. The main characters, we've got me, we've got Angry Dad, and Cool Manager. It was a busy shift, a Friday or Saturday night right at the dinner rush, line out the door. A family was set at one of the extra-large tables in my section. Angry Dad, his wife, and a gaggle of kids. I went over and I did the usual greetings/drink order stuff. Angry Dad was a little cranky, but otherwise content to be seated. They order food, I ring it in, and now we wait. Like I said, this was a busy night. Ticket times were probably close to 30 minutes. In the meantime, I was taking care of the other tables in my section. Every time I would walk by, he would stop me and ask where his food was. Did my best to explain we were busy, but his order would be out as soon as possible. Finally, after 20 to 30 minutes, the food comes out. I do my check-in, and of course, Angry Dad complains about too much or not enough of something on his burger. It was like 15 years ago, I can't remember specifics. I apologize and let him know I'll have the kitchen remake it. A table had just been set right next to him. I quickly greeted them and said I would be right back. They gave that understanding look. So I run to the kitchen and have the expo put in the red ticket replacement order, so it should be up in a matter of minutes. I then go back to take the order of the nice couple. Of course, Angry Dad glares at me my entire walk over. I inform him a fresh burger will be brought out shortly. I then turn to the right to take the other table's order. As they're telling me what they would like, Angry Dad, "Why's my food taking so long?" Me, "Apologies, sir. The kitchen is working on it." Angry Dad, "I shouldn't have to wait." Me, again, "Sorry, sir. Let me finish taking these people's order and I'll check with the kitchen." "Look here." He grabs my wrist. Now, dear reader, let me add in the detail that you and Angry Dad did not know. I've been training in martial arts for most of my life. At this point, at least 15 years. Do you know what happens when you train that long? Muscle memory. Between his grab and yelling, along with my adrenaline, I lost a few seconds, but when I became aware again, I had Angry Dad in a wrist lock, face down in a basket of ketchup and fries on the table. All I could think was, oh no, I'm gonna be fired. I released his arm and power walked into the back break area. A few deep breaths and I walked back to the floor to assess the damage. As I come around the corner, I see Angry Dad screaming at Cool Manager, red in the face from anger and from ketchup. Angry Dad, "And I want him fired. I'm calling the cops. My wife and kids all saw him attack me, and I'm pressing charges." I start to panic and back away slowly. Cool Manager, "Oh, we will absolutely call the cops, but you should be gone before they get here." Angry Dad, "What?" Cool Manager, "Besides being belligerent and disrupting other guests, I saw you grab my employee. My staff saw you grab my employee. I'm sure we'll all love making statements to the cops about our coworker defending himself." Angry Dad, utter silence. Cool Manager, "You need to leave now, and I don't want to see you here again." Angry Dad proceeds to collect his family and heads for the door. The whole time, Cool Manager stands there glaring at him. As soon as they are all out of the door, Cool Manager bursts into laughter and turns to me. Cool Manager, "That was the coolest thing I've seen happen in any restaurant I've worked at." High five. So dear reader, that's the story of the night I thought I was gonna get fired. Instead, I got some good tips, made the boss laugh hysterically, and gained a reputation of being a tough guy by the kitchen staff. Entitled Mom tries to spend fake money at my register. I was doing my usual thing, working the electronics section at my shop, helping customers as best as I could, and doing my best not to get fired for being on my phone, when this mom and her daughter came up asking to get one of the few Nintendo Switches we had left, along with a copy of Animal Crossing. I pulled it out for them and brought them to the register, and the total came out to just under $400. The mother henceforth shall be referred to as Entitled Mom, hands me 4 $100 bills, and this is where the problem started. Recently, the store I work at had a massive issue with counterfeit bills, so now the new store policy is to run any bill over $20 through this machine that will test it and determine if it's legitimate or not. In the event that the machine determines them to be fake, we're ordered to call a manager down right away, and under no circumstances are we to give the money back. I already had some small red flags going off since these bills felt way too much like regular paper. But when I started to run the bills through the machine, Entitled Mom started demanding to know what I was doing, which set off another red flag in my brain. I let her know what I was doing, and she got very defensive right away, telling me how the bills were real and how she had just picked them up from the bank. When I told her that it was just the store policy, she got very irritated and told me to hurry up and looked really jumpy, just constantly looking around and swaying back and forth like she was on something. I ended up running all the bills at least 5 times. Each and every time, the machine said they failed whatever authenticity check it ran on them. At that point, I start following store policy and call the manager down, while trying to play it off like it's just a simple glitch we needed fixed. I guess she got spooked by that, because she immediately demanded I give her the money back, saying how she'll go somewhere else. When I told her I couldn't, she went into full Karen meltdown mode, pulling out her phone to record me, demanding to tell her my full name, and worst of all, kept insinuating that I was treating her this way because she was a person of color. For whatever reason, the manager was taking forever to come down, and things were only getting worse as Entitled Mom continued to make more of a scene, when out of nowhere, she tried reaching over the counter to grab the Switch. I managed to pull it out of her reach just in time and got on the walkie to call security, when all of a sudden, she spits in my face. calls me a jerk, and then storms out of the store with her kid, who is screaming and crying. Maybe 5 minutes later, the manager comes down and I get to explain what happened. He ran the bills through the machine and got the same result of all of them failing. And maybe a half an hour later, I was giving a statement to some rather disinterested-looking cops. I called my boss after that, and she said I could go home a few hours early if I wanted to, which I took her up on. I got home, took a couple of showers, and thought I'd share how my crappy day went. They framed and fired me, so I got them a prison sentence. I'm going to share with you how I was framed and fired from my job and accidentally set off a chain reaction that led to a staff overhaul, with several managers being fired or moved to other restaurants, the general manager being fired and getting a divorce, and one of the managers being investigated by the FBI and ultimately arrested. Here we go. I used to work at an upscale restaurant owned by a large corporate entity that owns several different restaurant brands. I worked there for about 3.5 years before they eventually fired me, but more about that later. First, I want to give an idea of my role there. My role at that job was a little bit of everything. Since the day I started working there, I took it upon myself to learn as much as possible. I was very persistent with management when I wanted to learn a new department. I had started as a server, but eventually had worked my way into different departments and job titles like carryout, hosting, bartending, bar packing, banquets, catering, and deliveries. My single goal while working there was to make myself available for as many hours as possible. I was being paid about $12 an hour, though that fluctuated if I was working as a bartender or server and making tips. Eventually, it was noticed by management how I fit best into one of the non-tipped positions. I was so good at it, they decided to try me out as an unofficial supervisor over the team that worked in carryout, catering, and deliveries, as those were all one department. I knew this was going to ultimately mean a few less hours since I would only be working one department, so I negotiated with management to increase my pay by about $1.50. Since I was taking on additional responsibilities, they were satisfied with the pay increase. I wasn't trying to get as much money as possible, I just wanted to be able to pay my bills and still have a little money left over for fun. I was living in the highly taxed city of Chicago, which is in the already highly taxed state of Illinois, so it was pretty difficult to make ends meet and still have money left to enjoy my life. I am a person of simple pleasures, and I can enjoy things for long periods of time, so it didn't take much money to make me happy. A video game could hold my attention for several months, sometimes even years. I had a family pet that I had brought with me to Chicago, so that counted as an extra expense. Not long after I started this position as the unofficial supervisor, I got a girlfriend, so I was also going out more often and spending money on her. With my position and some smart budgeting, I was able to afford all of this. The money wasn't an issue, but management had a high turnover rate, so the incoming managers often did not know what the department entailed or how important hours were to workers of these departments. Eventually, it was noted that our current general manager was going to be fired and replaced. The incoming general manager was supposed to be some rock star when it came to improving restaurants. We looked up his name and found him as the first search result on Google, but the entry wasn't some glowing review of his work ethic or of his impeccable ability to improve the way a restaurant runs. It was actually a mugshot and a police report filed for repeated abuse. This is important later. We'll call him Harvey. Shortly after Harvey came in and started making changes, one of our best managers gave her resignation. She refused to work with him, and like an oracle, told us to expect lots of harassment, mean comments, and for him to eventually run this place into the ground. Not long after she left, our general manager began replacing our current managers with hand-picked people that he had worked with in the past. Eventually, all but one manager was replaced. That manager was the kitchen manager. We'll call him Fredo. Fredo had been there since I had started working there. He seemed to be something of a chameleon, as in his values and ethics seemed to change depending on who his boss was. Honestly, I sort of applaud his survival instincts, but ultimately see him as a suck-up and a traitor. Harvey never really replaced the manager for our department, so we ran without a lot of oversight. Unless you count me as the supervisor, we didn't constantly have someone breathing down our necks about how things should be done. Our department had some hiccups here and there, but it still ran really smoothly. Since we do not have our own manager, we often had to radio for a manager to come help us out on things that needed a manager card for approval. Fredo would always be the one to answer these calls since the kitchen was closest to our department. Over time, the new team of managers started to see Fredo as the manager of our department as well. However, the hourly team that worked there still saw me as their supervisor. This meant that anytime Fredo was trying to make changes that would ultimately hurt us, the team relied on me to mitigate those disasters or to negotiate with Fredo to let us do our jobs the way we had already proven worked really well. Over several months, Fredo and I would butt heads dozens of times. He and I were constantly arguing about how important hours were to the workers in this department. He had it in his head that we should be living off of tips like servers, but since most of our orders were carryout, they came in through Grubhub, and Grubhub doesn't tip. We didn't have a lot of deliveries in a day, and the tips we got from those deliveries were maybe $10 if we were lucky. But splitting $10 4 ways doesn't add up to a lot. It just showed that Fredo had no clue what he was talking about. Eventually, we had a meeting with Harvey, Fredo, and all of the workers in this department. It was marketed as a chance to voice all of our grievances and concerns with the changes they wanted to make with no chance of retaliation. So the workers did exactly that. They talked about how Fredo was trying to cut hours even though he isn't our actual manager. When it was brought up that they were attempting to hire someone to be the manager, the team suggested that I take over since I had already been supervising them and running things smoothly for the last several months. I was also the one that management consulted with when writing schedules, as I had an understanding of the days some workers could and couldn't work depending on their school schedules or family life. I could see at the moment it was suggested that Harvey and Fredo made the decision on the spot that I had to be gotten rid of. Although they didn't say it, I could see the look they gave each other and instinctively knew that my days at this place were numbered and my job was going to be getting the axe one way or another. They made a bunch of promises to us about not cutting hours. They told us that they would stop sending all but one person home early and only leaving one person to clean everything and close up by themselves, as this wasn't a small department and it was simply too much for one person to do alone while still meeting health and safety standards. They promised that whatever hours we were scheduled for, we would work. We weren't trying to be unreasonable, so we told them that we usually have 3 or 4 people scheduled to work our department. They could cut 2 of them early, but we always needed at least 2 people here to help close properly. The promise was made that they would always have at least 2 closers. However, only about a week later, they started sending all but one person home early again every night. One night, they tried to do it while I was scheduled as the closer, and we had just returned from a massive catering event, and there was an unbelievable amount of cleanup left to do for one person. When Fredo came in and tried to send everyone except me home, I stepped up and told him that he was consistently breaking the promise he had made to us during the meeting. He looked me square in the face and told me to stop complaining about it, and if I was going to keep trying to talk to him about him breaking his promises, he could easily find someone who would work my shifts. I quickly realized that this was an attempt to end my job. He wanted me to press it further, so I backed off and started cleaning. I ended up having to stay way late, and that meant overtime pay anyway. I got a write-up for that, since we aren't allowed to work overtime without a manager's approval. When I refused to sign the write-up, pointing out that I had tried to explain to Fredo that I wouldn't be able to clean up all that stuff alone before my scheduled shift ended, I was allowed to leave without signing the write-up, but only because the HR rep that was present at that time wasn't one of Harvey's cronies. Skip ahead to the day I was fired. It's important to note at this point that I always came into work an hour early. Since we lived in Chicago, food was expensive. However, at our job, we were allowed to have as much free soup and bread as we liked, so I would come into work 1 hour early every day so I could have some soup and bread for lunch before my shift. But on this day, when I walked into the kitchen to get myself some soup, one of the line cooks told me that he had a dish that had been canceled after he cooked it, and Fredo had told him to give it to someone. He assured me Fredo had already comped it and that it was free to take for whoever wanted it. It just so happened to be my favorite appetizer, so I happily took the free food. Not long after I got to my booth, both Harvey and Fredo approached me and asked me if I had put in a ticket for that food. I told them that the line cook had given it to me and said it was the canceled order that Fredo had already comped. Fredo looked dumbfounded and said he had no idea what I was talking about. So Harvey told me, "I think you know that's theft. Go ahead and finish the food and then grab your stuff and go. That's the last meal you'll be having here." I tried to explain to them that I had been given this food by the line cook, but they refused to listen. so I offered to take them to the kitchen to clear it up with the cook. But by the time I had gone back to the kitchen with them to talk to the line cook, he had already gone home for the day. I had no choice but to gather my stuff, say my goodbyes, and head home. On my way out, I told the people working my department that afternoon what had happened exactly as it had happened, and they were shocked and angry, but mostly sad to see me go. I decided that on my way out, I would stop by the accounting office and pick up any tips that may have been dropped for me that week, just to make sure I didn't get scammed out of that money. Before heading down, I had the gut feeling to just set my phone to record, and I stuffed it into my pocket with the camera rolling. Although the video was entirely black since it was in my pocket, I did manage to get a pretty muffled recording of Harvey's and Fredo's voices through the door, discussing how things had gone as planned, and that they had been trying to get rid of me ever since the meeting with my department. I knocked on the door, and they hushed up before opening it. They asked what I was still doing there, and I asked for my tips. They gathered what was in the safe for me and handed it over. Despite my anger rising at what I had just heard, I decided not to burn this bridge just yet, because perhaps I could end up nuking it later. I offered a handshake to both managers, thanked them for the opportunity to work there, and left, making sure to pull my phone out of my pocket and record the front of the restaurant, with a sign showing its name and logo. Working in a restaurant, you learn to always cover your own butt. It's true for most jobs, but something was just telling me I would need this all later. If I was being accused of theft, I wanted to be able to prove it wasn't true if it ever came up in future job interviews, which is exactly what happened and where this all started going nuclear. On the train ride home, I sent some messages and made some posts on some local groups on Facebook saying that I had just been fired and that I was looking for a job as quickly as possible. By the time I got off at my stop, I had already set up an interview for later that day. I was offered the job about 5 minutes into the interview, but after going over the details, it didn't sound like it was for me, so I turned it down. I interviewed at a few other places and found one that was a good fit, with a hefty pay increase compared to my previous job, and I wouldn't have to deal with customers. It was an auditing job for a logistics company. However, during the interview with the manager of this job, he mentioned he had already called my previous place of employment and spoken with the general manager, Harvey. Harvey had told him that I had been fired for theft. Luckily for me, the manager I was interviewing with asked me to tell him more about that, and he was willing to let me pull out my phone and find the recording. I asked if the voice in the video was the same as the one he had spoken on the phone with. It was. That was confirmation enough for him that I hadn't made a fake video. He listened to these two managers in the video admit that they had set me up and watched to the end when I showed the front of the restaurant, complete with the logo and name. The manager interviewing me, who we'll start calling Dean, hired me immediately and asked me to send him the recording. I did. I thought that was the end of it. About 7 months later, after settling into this job quite nicely, HR sent out a "Welcome all our new team members" email, which listed all of the newest hires, some facts about them, and had pictures of them all. They sent these out every time they hired a new round of people. One of them, Thomas, was a former coworker who worked with me at the restaurant. We had worked at the host stand together, so I was pretty glad to see someone I knew and liked coming onto the team. I sought out his desk and went and said hello and asked why he left the restaurant. He hadn't left willingly. He had been laid off because the company was under investigation. It had started as a relatively small matter. The corporate entity that owned the restaurant chain had received an email with an attached video. My video that had been filmed from inside my pocket. This was cause enough for corporate to send someone to investigate internally. Thomas was pretty surprised that I hadn't heard anything about it since there had been numerous attempts to get in touch with me. As soon as he said that, I logged into the old email I had used when I first applied for that job at the restaurant. I had at least 24 emails asking me to come in to discuss my employment and termination. I never replied. I just didn't care enough anymore. I had also changed my number since then, so they hadn't been able to contact me by phone. Thomas continued explaining that before corporate had sent someone, Harvey and Fredo had talked with my department and tried to offer them all a small pay increase to spin corporate's story about how I was incompetent at my job and failed to live up to my duties. The day the corporate auditor showed up, there had been a small exodus of people from my old department. They quit on the spot in front of the lady from corporate, let's call her Audrey, and made sure to rat out Harvey and Fredo before leaving. Strike one for both of them. Strike two came a couple of days after Audrey showed Harvey and Fredo the recording that had kicked all of this off. They denied it vehemently, but there was no mistaking Harvey's voice. It's unique. Not only that, but the video also picked up their voice and mine when we shook hands and had a friendly parting of the ways, which was something they had already bragged about to Audrey, thinking it made them look better that we were able to part on good terms. This wasn't the actual strike too. That came when it was clear they needed to be separated, so Audrey sent Fredo to work at another restaurant owned by our parent company and temporarily demoted Harvey to manager. This tore them apart. They had once been an inseparable evil team, but the pressure of the investigation must have pushed them over the edge. They ended up at each other's throats on Facebook on a public post on the company page. The post has since been deleted, but Thomas explained it as the following. Fredo had been pictured in the Facebook post on the restaurant page, and Harvey made a passive-aggressive comment about how Fredo shouldn't even be in the picture since he had been moved to another restaurant due to misconduct. Fredo saw this comment and said something along the lines of, "At least when people Google my name, I don't show up as a criminal." To which Harvey responded, "Very funny from the guy who is cheating on his wife with Janet's sister," not her real name, but Janet was the girl they appointed to officially supervise my old department after they fired me, the unofficial supervisor. Fredo replies to that by saying, "Like you haven't tried with half the waitresses. They all have stories about you trying to get with them." The post was deleted, but not before it had been seen by Audrey the auditor. That was officially strike 2. Strike 3 came the next day when Audrey started interviewing the female waitstaff and bartenders, seeing if any of them could confirm that Harvey had tried to make a move on them. All of them were interviewed separately. Several of them had similar stories. All of them confirmed that he had tried to make a move on them and even offered to be their sugar daddy if they would fool around with him. Harvey was fired, but that isn't the worst of it. Audrey the auditor wasn't just some random lady from corporate. She was the old regional manager for this area and had personally hired Harvey's wife as the general manager of another restaurant in the city. So she called up the restaurant Harvey's wife worked at and told his wife everything she had learned from the female waitstaff. We learned later that they had gotten a divorce over him trying to cheat on her after she had already given him a second chance to change after he had attacked her. I don't know what compelled her to give him a second chance after something like that, but she sure didn't give him a third. After firing Harvey, the line cook who had given me the food was interviewed by Audrey. I don't know how it came up, but at some point, he had let it slip that he was an illegal immigrant. She had his file in her hand with an Illinois ID and social security number on file, so this confused her, and she pressed him for more information. It turned out that Fredo had some connections and had his own little thing going on where he would have fake social security cards and IDs made for people who he was hiring at reduced wages. It had been going on for at least 4 years. Needless to say, this is a felony. With the potential PR nightmares that she was likely dealing with, she felt she had no choice but to alert the authorities. Local PD enlisted the help of the FBI since some of the evidence led them beyond the jurisdiction of the local police. Fredo was arrested and quickly gave up the names of all the people working that he had sold the social security cards and IDs to. I'm not sure if he gave up all of them, but he did name drop about 14 people, and of those 14, at least half of them were deported by the time Thomas had been let go. One of them was the line cook that had given me the food the day I was fired. Thomas went on to explain that it had all started with me being fired, but I never sent that recording to corporate. I had only sent it to Dean when he hired me. I asked him about it, and he told me he had sent it to his wife since she was a lawyer. He wanted to see if I had a case to maybe sue my old job since what they had done wasn't wrong. But he also remembered that when we had first talked about it, I said I'm not the type of person who would try to make millions off of an entire company because of the mistake of 2 jerks. But I'd also said that it would be pretty sweet to see them lose their jobs too. So his wife had been the one that sent it to the legal team at the corporate HQ of my old restaurant job. My boss showed it to his wife, who forwarded it to the real head honchos of my old job. They were both just trying to get 2 scumbags fired for what they did to me, but ended up pulling a thread so long that it didn't end until there were harassment accusations, revelations about managers cheating on their spouses with people related to people they had placed in positions of authority, a divorce, mass layoffs, pending investigations, a staff overhaul, an FBI investigation, and at least a half dozen deportations, and probably as many as 14. Grocery store Mega Karen and her entitled kid gave me a headache today and made me snap. Today, I met a wild Mega Karen and her spawn. I'm not one for confrontation and rarely respond, but she got the best of me. I was out for my weekly supply run at a pretty big supermarket. Filled my cart till I struggled making any curves and went to checkout. There was only this one person in front of me, whom we shall obviously call Karen, and her entitled kid. I respect the distance and stay back as she takes her sweet time putting her groceries in the checkout line. That's not an issue. I had nowhere else to be. The cashier was not ringing anything up, which was a bit odd. Entitled kid starts taking stuff and throwing it back in the cart while laughing hysterically. His mom doesn't say anything, just smiles at him as she continues what now seems pretty futile, as entitled kid is just filling up the cart again. This goes on for about 10 minutes and I'm getting frustrated. So I let out a sigh, thinking my mask would cover it. I was more frustrated than I thought. It did not. They both stopped and looked at me and the beautiful long as heck line forming behind me, but say nothing. Entitled kid stares me down as he approaches the front of my cart and starts slowly pushing it towards me with his foot. I don't say anything. He's just a kid. Just smile and let him be. I put my foot behind one of the wheels so he can't move the cart and leave him be. Entitled kid keeps messing with my cart until I get a tad bit annoyed and politely ask his mom to get him. Karen stares me up and down and says,
"Fine. Sorry my kid is just being a kid and playing because he's bored. I guess you're just not a good person and don't want my baby around a bad influence."
And she puts him in her cart. Through the duration of this whole ordeal that followed, he glares at me and screams at the top of his lungs some silly kid's song. At times, I considered dialing up my priest. Finally, she had finished unloading her cart, and as the cashier started ringing her up, Karen starts screaming,
"What are you doing? Stop it at once. I need you to look at my groceries and tell me my total before scanning them. I only have $50.
The poor cashier looked stunned. You could read his face. I saw a lot of crap, but this one is on a whole nother level. He was trying to answer, but no words were coming out. I bursted out laughing at this point. The following conversation ensues. Karen:
"What? What's your problem? It's your job. Do your job. What's my total?"
Cashier: "Ma'am, I'm really sorry, but I can't know your total before I scan everything. I can start scanning, and when it hits $50, I can stop."
"No, that is not what I asked. This is your job. You should know prices for everything. Take out your phone and calculate my total."
Cashier: "Ma'am, I am very sorry, but I cannot do that. It would take a very long time, and there's already a long line waiting." Karen looks at the line of people, sighs angrily while saying,
"Fine, start scanning,"
and starts putting stuff back while the cashier is scanning. I am very annoyed, but still say nothing. The cashier finishes scanning, and after putting back half of her stuff, her total is a bit over $30. She pays and put her bags in the cart for her entitled kid to rampage through, and I start unloading my cart. You thought it was over? So did I. It was not. Karen:
"Stop! Did I say I was finished? I am not finished."
I just roll my eyes and start laughing. Karen:
"Is there any farm animal food in here?"
Cashier: "Yes, ma'am, in the far right corner." Karen:
"Of course you put it there. Now it's gonna take me forever to go get some."
Now, facing me with a death stare and with the snottiest of tones.
"See? I told you I wasn't finished. It's still my turn, and I need animal feed. Be right back."
As she starts walking towards me, in the loudest, so I could cover her still squealing kid, nicest voice I could produce at this time, I say, "Stop. No, we waited long enough. Also, as I see it from here, you got enough food for yourself. You don't need more. You know, hoarding is bad and all. You would need some decency, but they don't sell it here. So please, can all of us just go on with our day?" She was definitely not expecting an answer, so I got a surprised Pikachu face. After she got so red, I thought a vein might pop out. But seeing the huge crowd behind me burst out laughing, she simply says nothing and storms off, huffing and puffing. I got such a headache right now, and still get annoyed when I remember their entitlement. Sorry to all the animals I offended. Entitled mom leaves her kid at a camp she didn't even pay for. To preface this story, I teach gymnastics in a very affluent part of a very, very big city in Southern California. You know the one. I've encountered a lot of entitled parents in my time at this gym, most of them irritating and not worth posting about. But there's one Russian mom who is absolutely off her rocker. My boss has some experience with her and doesn't put up with her BS. So the cast. We've got me, we've got insane mom, we've got her poor son. Every school holiday, we have day camps where 30 kids come to the gym and we play games, practice gymnastics, generally mess around. Our camps are really popular and usually fill up at least a week in advance. Additionally, we allow parents to use their kids' missed classes/makeups as credit towards a day of camp for a reduced rate. This particular day of camp, I was working at the front desk and we were slammed. I had already turned multiple walk-ins away because we were over capacity for USAG regulations, which is in violation of our insurance policy. Around 2 hours after camp started, about 11 a.m., kid walks in the front door by himself. This is weird for 2 reasons. 1, because parents are supposed to come inside and sign their kids in and out. 2, because entitled mom sent us an email the night before that explicitly instructed us not to enroll kid in camp and not to charge her card. So I asked kid to run outside and ask his mom to please come in so I can sort things out. He opens the door, yells back and forth with her in Russian for a bit, and closes the door. As entitled mom drives away, kid tells me that entitled mom is going to call me. Great. This is how the most insane phone conversation of my life went. Entitled mom, from an anonymous number, might I add. What? Me. Hi, I just wanted to speak with you because I'm a bit confused. Last night, you sent us an email instructing us not to enroll kid in our camp. Yes, because last time you enrolled him, you charged my card $65, 1 day of camp, and you stole my money. Me. Ma'am, that is how much 1 full day of camp costs. I'm going to have to ask you to come pick up your son because we're at capacity for the day. No, there's no way your camp is full. I unenrolled him last night when I sent you the email. Me. Yes, and we had a walk-in this morning that took his spot. No, I sent that email at 10 last night. There's no way your camp is full between now and then. Me. Actually, we had the last spots taken by a few walk-ins this morning, so we are full. You can't just drop your son off here without paying after instructing us not to enroll him. There's no way your camp is full. I sent that email at 10 last night. 5 full minutes of me trying to explain to her how spots are limited, and when she gave kid's spot up, it became available for the first person to walk in. Eventually, she seems to get it. Entitled mom. Okay, that makes sense. Extended pause. Well, you'll just have to call one of those other parents and tell them you made a mistake and they need to come get their kid. Because my kid is special and has been taking classes there for a while and he deserves it. Me. Excuse me? That's not how this works. Kid lost his spot when you told us to unenroll him. My kid deserves to be there. He's more important than the other kids and has been there longer, so you can call their parents and tell them you made a mistake. Me. No, you need to come get your kid. But I made plans. I'm sorry, but we don't have room for him because you specifically told us not to enroll him. Because last time you stole from me. You took $65 from me. I work hard for my $65. Me. That's how much 1 day of camp costs. No, I wanted to use makeups and you charged my card $65 and stole from me. Me. Ma'am, we don't know that you want to use makeups unless you come in and tell us. Most people just use them for another class. Oh, that makes sense. Silence. Me. Yes, I'm going to need you to come pick him up. But I have to work. I thought she made plans. Me. I understand that, but we don't have room for kid. It's against USAG regulations for us to take him, so you can either come get him or I can have my boss call you. No, I don't want to talk to your boss. Then you need to come get your kid. I can't. I have to work. Me. Fine. I'll have my boss call you. I don't want to talk to your boss. Either you can come get your kid or I can have my boss call you. I don't want to talk to your boss. Okay, this conversation is unproductive. I'll have my boss call you. I hung up and called my boss, as promised. Her kids still come to class, but she's banned from bringing them to camp unless she walks them in and pays at the beginning of the day. She still constantly brings them in an hour before our half day starts and asks me if I'll be charging her for a half day instead of full, and I always politely tell her that no, I'll be charging her for the full day. Now she just speaks to her kids in Russian and has them talk to me for her. Karen gets me suspended for banning her kid in Minecraft. Backstory. We have a school-wide Minecraft server, and I am the moderator for it. We have about 100 people on the server. Pretty cool, right? It's not run by the school, but run by me. A, my best friend, and M, my second best friend. If someone wants to join, you need to pay $15 at the start and $1 every month for the server. We have a rule that you can't swear and also aren't allowed to steal other people's stuff. So one day I go on the server to see what's up, and I see Entitled Kid making something he shouldn't be. The conversation goes as follows. Me, what are you doing, Entitled Kid? Entitled Kid, making a giant thing. You're not allowed to do that. Why? We said nothing that wasn't safe for work. Entitled Kid, I don't care, you piece of doo-doo. Me, you're not allowed to swear. Break the rules one more time, and I'm gonna kick you. Oh, really? Follow me. I start following him. He goes in my base and gets my diamond stash. Entitled Kid, wow, you have a lot of diamonds. Me, yeah, I've been on this world for about 2 years. Well, you're not gonna have any when I burn them. He starts taking my diamonds and burning them with a flint and steel. I quickly kick him and take my diamonds back. Yes, I did go to creative for this. They are my diamonds, and I didn't take any more than I had. Fast forward to the next day, I get called to the principal's office. Entitled Mom, this boy has been cyberbullied my kid for a long time, and he also forced my kid to give him $15. I want him suspended. Principal, do you agree? Me, no. Does she have any proof? Entitled Mom, how dare you speak to me like that? Principal, OP has a point. Do you have proof? Entitled Mom, I don't need proof. I want him suspended. He made my son give him $15. Me, he gave it to me for something else. For what? For the Minecraft server. Entitled Mom, see? He's lying. My little angel never plays those games. Me to the principal, I have proof that he gave it to me for the Minecraft server. Can you please tell my friends to come over and they will say the same thing? Principal, sure. My friends come and say the exact same thing. Principal, ma'am, you have no proof that he's been bullying your kid, so I have to ask you to leave. I'm reporting you to the Department of Education, and I'm going to enroll my kid somewhere else. Principal, as you wish, and please don't waste other principals' time. They have more important jobs to do than listen to lies. Then he told us to go to our classes. Speaking of Minecraft, have you ever played it? And which mode do you like to play on? Please let me know. The time an entitled man stole my plane seat. So this happened 3 years ago. I was flying home from Belgium, where I'd been attending my best friend's wedding. I was very sick at this time, but I was her sole bridesmaid and witness, so I couldn't miss it. Not to mention, I was the one decorated the venue. If you want a summary of how sick I was, the girl who did my makeup for the day actually jerked her hand back when she first touched my face. I was that hot. Anyway, the story isn't about the wedding, but the flight back home to Scotland. I must have looked awful because when I arrived early at the gate and struck up a conversation with the flight attendants asking how their day was going, etc., while waiting to board, they ensured I got to my seat first and told me if I needed anything to call them, and they brought me a bottle of water and something to nibble on before the plane took off. I had a window seat, which I always get. I love flying, and I love looking out at the water. And I'd also paid for extra leg room, as I have a messed up leg, and if it's bent in one position too long, it locks up. The plane was nearly fully boarded, and it seemed like, besides me and the person in the aisle seat, no one would be in our row, which was awesome. I also liked having a seat in the room for extra room. However, sadly, this was not to be, as one of the very last passengers to board was a rather drunk and, let's say, portly man. He shambled into the seat and sat down. I prepared myself for a flight next to someone who smelled like a pub while I already felt sick. The plane takes off and we're in the air, and all through the flight, the guy keeps leaning more and more into my space, clearly trying to get to see the window. I actually leaned back a bit to let him see out, figuring this might be his first flight, and trying to be kind, but this only seems to make it worse. Now, for context, I'm a tiny lady, so I was quite literally getting crushed between this guy and the wall. I get up to go to the bathroom as my stomach has finally decided it's time to vacate. The man is quite annoyed that he has to move to let me out, but he does so with only a grumbled protest. I go to the bathroom and take care of business, and then return. And what do I find? the man in my window seat with all his stuff on the middle seat. I ask him to move back to his seat so I can sit down. He refuses and tells me it's his seat and begins to kick up a huge fuss. At this point, one of the flight attendants comes over to figure out what's going on. He tells the whole story about how this is his seat and I'm trying to steal it, not knowing the flight attendant we're talking to, shout out to Kevin, was the one who'd gotten me seated in the first place. The flight attendant turned to me and, smiling, asked if I had my ticket. I'd taken my handbag with me to the bathroom, as I never leave it unattended, so I was able to present it. He then read my ticket and with a grin told the guy who'd stolen my seat that it was indeed my seat, but not to worry, he could keep it. He then turned to me and told me they had a free seat in first class and he was giving me an upgrade. So he took me to first class and I got a really nice rest of my flight. Karen wants me to fire the supervisor for ruining her weekend. I'm a retired state park supervisor, so this story is from a while back. Every Monday, we had to turn in weekly reports at our headquarters. There are a lot of things we're supposed to turn in then, but the important one was our weekly financials. That is, account for how many camping permits we sold, rentals, picnic or beach passes, etc., and how much money we took in. We did one for each day and one for the week. I was known as being OCD about them, so mine were always right, and I'd often walk other park supervisors or assistants through any issues they had. On this Monday, I turned in my reports, no problems, and started putting our supply order into the truck. That's when my boss came out and said, "Hey, Syndax, can you stop by Dee's Park on your way back? She can't print out her financials." I replied, "Yeah, I'll see what I can do." The reason I was asked is that I used to be a systems admin and owned a computer shop before this, and our IT people were notorious for slow response times. As a result, I frequently got called first to see if I could fix it. I didn't mind, because Dee was not just a friend of mine, she'd been my boss where I'd started, and I'd learned a lot about running parks from her. I stopped by, and Dee was getting frantic. She told me that everything had worked until yesterday, and while she was able to put the information in, the system wouldn't pull up the report page for printing. I told her to show me what she did. She pulled up the browser to access our reporting system, and right away I saw the problem. "Why are you using Chrome?" I asked. Dee replied, "What? What do you mean? I just clicked on the icon to do my report," she said. Now, I have no problem with Chrome or Firefox, but the official browser was Internet Explorer. The system we used for reports had browser-specific scripts, so you couldn't use any other browser. I explained this to Dee, and she growled. It turned out that yesterday, her daughter and grandson had come for a visit, and while Dee had been out taking care of something, her daughter had decided to upgrade the computer by installing Chrome on it. Of course, one of the things it does is ask you if you want to make it your default browser, and she had clicked yes, hence the difficulty in printing reports. It was an easy fix, I just had to change it back, which I did. I then said, "Now try it," to Dee, and lo, the report popped up. She thanked me, and I said no problem, glad it was a simple fix, but tell your daughter to not upgrade the work computers. I left the office and was headed to my truck when this woman came charging up to me, late 40s or early 50s, sort of large, blonde, short hair, a Karen.
"Are you the park supervisor?"
She said. I'm a park supervisor, but that was all I got out. She proceeded to start yelling about how my park ranger had ruined her family's weekend. Now, this park didn't have a park ranger. She was talking about Dee. I tried to get a word in edgewise, but nope, she was on a tear about that jerk. I realized I was going to have to wait her out. She proceeded to tell me all about how Dee had ruined her weekend, while I started mentally adding up the various park rules and state laws this woman and her family had broken. By the time she wound down, I'd counted 5 park rules, 2 misdemeanors, and a probable felony, and thinking that Dee must have been in a forgiving mood. She finally ended with, "And I want her fired." I said, "I can't do that." She yelled, "Why the heck not?" I said, "Because she's the supervisor of this park. I'm the supervisor of a different park. I can say that I wouldn't have ruined your weekend." She said, "Really?" I said, "Absolutely. If you'd been at my park, I'd have had the police in to give you tickets and then evicted you. I'd have ruined your life." She stared at me for a second and said, "I'm going to call your headquarters about this." I said, "I'm sure you will when you get home." And then I smiled and in a cheery voice added, Now have a safe trip." She huffed, turned around, and stormed back to her car. I waved as she left. As our car was disappearing, I heard laughter coming from behind me. Dee had come out of the office and had tears in her eyes from laughing. She said, "I can't believe you just did that." I said, "Well, I figured I should show her just how much worse it could have been." Dee said, "I always thought people from my former work were exaggerating when they called you the supervisor from heck. I thought you were really easygoing, but I can see now why they called you that." Me, I don't like doing it, but when the situation calls for it, well, I release my inner jerk. We laughed and I went back to my park. And no, the Karen never called, or if she did, it never made it back to us. Entitled neighbor tries to have a tree older than her house cut down illegally. My family has lived in the same home for about 24 years now. My entire life we've had the same neighbors on both sides of us. On one side is the sweetest elderly lady who bakes us fudge every Christmas to thank us for any help we give her throughout the year. On the other side is a family whose parents seem to think the world revolves around their own lives. Now this family moved in about 2 or 3 years before us, giving them the idea that their opinions trump the lives of any of their neighbors. I know this because both the parents and the kids, who are the same age as myself, have explicitly told me this. There's a giant tree in my parents' backyard that admittedly has become a bit overgrown. A branch or two have reached over the fence, leading into our neighbor's yard. In the fall, the tree sheds its leaves, as trees do, and maybe 1% of the leaves will make their way into the neighbor's yard. This tree has been a part of my childhood and all 3 of my siblings' childhoods. Needless to say, my family is quite attached to our tree. Well, about 15 years ago, my neighbors decided to build a pool. We've had issues with them over time, so when they started to gripe about the leaves from the tree falling into their pool, we just brushed it off. Fast forward to about 2 years ago. I had finished up the college semester and came back to visit my parents for the week. I was at home relaxing and enjoying my time off when the dogs started barking, so I went to check it out. While looking out the window, I saw a team of tree trimmers begin to unload and set up in the backyard. It wouldn't be the first time my parents didn't mention having work done on the house, so I didn't think anything of it. I called my old man to see if the trimmers would need anything from me while they were here, but he was working, so I just left him a message. He got back to me about 30 minutes later, completely confused, so we knew something wasn't right. At that point, I went out back and told them to take a break because there has been a mistake. Luckily, they had only managed to take 2 or 3 branches off the tree, so there was still a chance the tree would survive. It was the quickest I've ever seen my dad do his drive home. I went out back with him so that I could figure out what was up. After a very loud discussion and a lawsuit threat later, the trimmers decided it was best they didn't finish up the job or take down all of the branches. Well, it turns out that our entitled neighbor decided to take it upon herself to hire a company to come and take down the tree in our yard. When she told the company that was in her neighbor's yard, they only asked if she got it cleared with us. They didn't make any efforts to make sure it was cool. To make the situation even sweeter, the crew working on the tree wouldn't stop the job until the owner of the company came to the site and cleared up the situation. I don't know about you guys, but if I found out I was doing unauthorized work and trespassing on someone's property, I'd take that as my cue to leave. When my parents demanded an explanation, the only thing our neighbor would say was that since the couple branches were reaching over the fence, she had the right to get the tree taken down. That's when the police got involved. She was informed that she was not allowed to have the branches trimmed past the fence, something my parents said they could have done if the neighbor paid for it. But due to the significant branches trimmed off on our property, she would be looking at destruction of property if the tree died. Luckily, the tree stands to this day, and the wind seems to blow just a bit harder towards their yard each fall. Entitled Mom wants my window seat, but won't even ask me for it. A little background. Normally, I travel for a living and fly to and from Canada a couple of times a month. My company uses a travel agent, and with only a few exceptions, we are required to take the cheapest flight option, regardless of convenience or inconvenience to ourselves. This means that while I travel often, it's with different airlines every time, which in turn means that while I have thousands and thousands of airline miles, they're spread out over several airlines, and it takes me forever to reach and keep any sort of frequent flyer status with any of them. It also makes for very, very long days, with me leaving my house or hotel at 3 or 4 a.m. and often getting home to my destination at midnight, or sometimes getting my travel split across 2 days. So this happened in March. just a few days before my company started having us work from home. Final leg of my flight home, I'm on an airline that I've finally managed to build up enough status to start getting possible upgrades. This is literally the first time I've been upgraded, and it's from a standard economy seat to a bulkhead window seat. As I'm boarding the plane, there's an older lady and her approximately 5-year-old grandson in the aisle and middle seat. Grandson in the middle, grandma in the aisle. As I'm walking up, she is telling the kid that she's going to take the window seat just as soon as they're sure no one is sitting there. I politely inform her that someone is sitting there, me, and I take my seat. She then starts telling her grandson how much she wants a window seat and how sweet it would be if someone were to give up their window seat for her. I should point out that the grandson is busy playing with his iPad and clearly isn't listening at all. When I don't immediately jump up and offer her my seat, she switches tactics and starts asking the kid if he wants the window seat. How cool would it be for you to have a window seat on your first flight ever? And such. Kid still obviously doesn't give a hoot and keeps playing with his tablet, and I, again, don't rise to the obvious bait. She then grabs a flight attendant and asks if there are any open window seats. Flight attendant says she's pretty sure they're going to be a full flight, but she'll check back after boarding is done. Grandma switches back to how lovely it would be if someone would just give up their seat for her. Note, we're back to giving the seat to her. It's no longer about the kid getting the window seat for his first flight ever. At this point, I put on my headphones and ignore her. She stops trying to hint her way into my seat and just starts loudly sighing every few minutes. Note, if at any point she had simply condescended to speak to me and ask me for my seat, I probably would have given it to her. But her passive-aggressive entitlement BS was never going to work with me, especially after a long day of travel. Entitled old man tries to force me, a disabled girl, to get up and move. A few years ago, I went on holiday with my mom, dad, brother, aunt, and uncle and their friends. My aunt and uncle live far away from us, so the holiday was specially planned to spend some time with them and to show their friends the brilliant parts of our country. One evening, the family decided we would walk down to this fabulous deck with a lovely view of nature and the sunset for some evening drinks. This deck also served as the waiting area for the reception of the hotel we were staying in, and as a result, had about 5 areas of seating with enough space for about 6 people at each. My brother and I decided we would walk down a little before while the adults got ready. When we got there, we picked a spot with a good view, put our stuff down, and ordered some cool drinks. 10 minutes later, my uncle arrives with his wife and her friend, who immediately go to check out the curio shop. He sits down and orders a beer. It arrives, but he then gets up to look for his wife and her friend to ask what they'd like to drink. Shortly after this, a tour guide arrived with at least 20 couples on his tour. They're obviously all waiting to be booked in. It's worth noting that his guests were all elderly, but that they were in no way unable to stand for long periods of time. With my brother and I and the other people who were previously in the reception area, there weren't enough seats for them all. Now, I have a very visible physical disability that renders me unable to walk without a walking frame. Even if I attempt to stand without it, I'll fall on my face. The tour guide walks over to me and my brothers and says, while leaning on my walker, "Excuse me, but you two need to move now. My guests need to sit down here." My brother and I were a bit taken aback, and we didn't really think it was fair, considering that it's not only the reception, but also a place for social gatherings, and that seats work on a first-come, first-served basis. However, because our parents always taught us to give up our seats to the elderly, I slowly start getting up. At this point, my uncle returns and says, "Excuse me, but what are you doing? We were here first." The guy replies with, "You need to respect your elders. My guests need those seats. They," referring to us, "can move. This is my business." My uncle calmly comes back with, "Sorry, but I don't know if you've realized that she's disabled and can't stand for long periods of time. Who are you to tell her to move? We won't be moving." The guy calls my uncle a jerk and tells him to show some respect, but he goes away huffing. Not even 10 seconds later, people in his tour come up to my uncle and say, "Well done for standing your ground. We're so sorry for his behavior, it's embarrassing." The guy comes back later to try and give my uncle an inadequate apology, which my uncle accepts, but says to him, "Considering that your guests told me themselves that your behavior is embarrassing, I think you need to rethink your business skills." He walked away red and avoided us the whole evening. We had a lovely dinner. Karen demands my Disney Plus account. The stars. We've got myself, Karen, Karen's kid, and H-E-B store manager. This one kinda hurt to endure, not gonna lie. I'm not sure how the rest of the world has done stuff like this, but this past whole month, we in my hometown have treated our shopping days like Black Friday. Wake up real early, stand in line outside of the store, wait, etc. I decided to shop on a Saturday morning, woke up early, went to H-E-B, Texas-based grocery store. While waiting in line, I decided to start Star Wars 3. I haven't seen it yet and have only seen episodes 1, 2, 7, 8, and this last Christmas, 9. A cute woman and her kid had just queued up behind me. Her kid is running around and she's trying to control him. I turn the volume on my headphones up. A few minutes later, I feel someone poke my shoulder. I turn around to see who they are, what they want. It's Karen. I pause the movie and take out one earpiece. Karen.
So, is that Disney Plus you're watching?
Me. It is. I'm catching up on Star Wars.
Oh, my son loves Star Wars.
She pronounced it Star Wars. Me. It's not as cool as Harry Potter, and I'm more of a Trekkie myself, but it's not bad. I thought this was all the conversation was going to be. Go back to streaming my Mouse House subscription. She pokes my shoulder again. Me. Yes? She has a pen out and looks like she's going to start writing.
So, what are your login credentials?
Me. I'm sorry?
Oh, you know, to your Disney Plus. My husband and kid love Star Wars and Marvel, and I could go for a classic Disney fix.
To that, I just turn around. Holy cow, how do people like that even exist? Karen decides to get in front of me and get into my face like she's gonna fight me. Karen.
Excuse me, did you just ignore me? I asked for your login stuff. We don't have anything to do at home. How could you be so selfish?
Me. I don't even know who you are. Karen.
Does that even matter, boy? You know, you are the only person here who is alone, and I think I know why. Not only do you take up 5 spots, but you're selfish.
I know I'm big, but not that big. I identify as Peter Quill from Infinity War, chubby, but not obese. So anyway, Karen is an unholy brick about not getting what she wants until somebody interrupts. It's the store manager. Apparently, this woman had upset somebody a few feet up ahead, and now the manager is here to investigate. Manager. Excuse me, but can I help you with something? I explain the problem. Karen gives him her version of events. Store manager. Sir, I'm so sorry that you had to endure this. Please come to the front of the line and be one of the first people to shop today. At that, I swear, I heard Karen cry like her 5-year-old kid. Speaking of groceries, where do you do your grocery shopping? Please let me know. Ever wonder what would happen if Karen got treated as if she worked there? Wonder no more. This happened just a few hours ago. Some background information. A certain grocery store chain in my state, where shopping is a pleasure, has taken the recommended 6-foot distance to another level by turning aisles into alternating one-ways to help traffic flow, indicated by squares glued on the tile floors. Most times, when someone goes down the wrong aisle, it's by accident, weren't watching where they were walking, turned into the wrong aisle, or because what they need is closer to the inn they're walking close to. For the most part, nobody says anything because, to be fair, nobody wants to be known as a jerk. I went to the store today to get some things, and because I've been cooped up in the apartment all day long. One of said things was my favorite body scrub. Hey, I could use a spa day as much as the next girl. Most times, shopping there is a pleasure like their motto says. I was greeted by name by some of the regular workers who know me, and they had most of everything I needed. They even had my favorite type of cheesecake on sale in the bakery. So why do I say that it wasn't a pleasure this time? Because there was a New York Karen loose in the store. How do I know? Well, because I could hear her Bronx-accented squawking 3 aisles away at some poor employee.
What do you mean you're out of Clorox? I've come here every day for the past week, and you've always been out.
I felt bad for that poor employee, but went on my way because I didn't want to get involved and potentially make that poor employee's day worse. So I was going the right way down the personal care aisle and I didn't see the scrub, so I decided to keep going and try another day. I was at the other end and had stepped out when I realized I had just walked right past the location where the scrub was. Because it was right at the very end and I didn't want to walk down another aisle and go the right way, I stepped over the square saying wrong way. That's when I heard that familiar Bronx squawk.
Hey, you!
Feeling sorry for the employee she was no doubt screaming at this time, I kept walking towards the body scrub.
Hey, you!
I was putting a tub of it into my cart, thinking that it was the end of it, when I heard a loud whistle. It wasn't just any type of whistle. It's the whistle guys use in movies to hail taxi cabs, and moms use when their kids are 3 blocks away to tell them to come home, otherwise they're in trouble. So of course, I turn over to look at where the whistle had come from, and oh boy, did I realize my mistake. Blocking the end of the aisle with her overflowing cart was our Karen. Think businesswoman type with the Karen hairdo. Seriously, the barber/hairdresser who came up with that style should patent it, would make a lot of money. And
I'm better than you, so you shut up and do as I say
type face. I look at her with a bit more of a dumbfounded face than I was intending because I was the only person in the aisle, and I sure as heck wasn't wearing the employee-mandated uniform. She pointed to the floor tile marked wrong way and said, okay, more like screeched,
You went the wrong way. Don't you know that there's a sickness going around?
As fierce as my Scots, Irish, German temper can be, I decided to have a little bit of fun at her expense because why the heck not? A big smile crosses my face as I put on my best Scarlett O'Hara imitation because again, why the heck not? Oh, thank goodness, honey. I'm so glad to see you. I was wondering if you could bring me some paper towels and toilet paper. This is my 3rd stop today, and I was told by another store y'all had them. Oh, and can you please get me some hand sanitizer as somebody took my only bottle out of my cart? As I'm rattling on and on, asking for stuff that I know the store has been out of for a while, a crowd is starting to gather around, attracted by Karen's screeching and my Southern Belle niceness. A couple of them are employees that I'm friends with. They stop to watch because they know they're in for a good show. Now, because I'm treating her like an employee, something she most likely wasn't expecting, Karen is looking at me like I have 3 heads and a deep redness is crawling over her face. Figuring she was going to blow her top, I said, Now, would you please hurry and get me what I've asked you for? Or do we need to have a talk with your manager about your lack of courtesy? Karen spluttered, finally regaining her speech.
What in your right mind makes you think I work here?
Now I really upped the sarcasm, which if used by a Southerner means you done messed up, and said, Oh, I am so sorry, darling. I thought you were the store police. You did point out that I went the wrong direction. You don't work for the store police? Everyone is giving judgmental looks at the Karen. As I said, nobody has pointed out when people go the wrong way out of courtesy, and it's really nobody's business, and my employee friends are struggling to keep from laughing. Realizing that she has been made a fool of in front of everyone, Karen grabbed her cart and left, her head down and proverbial tail between her legs. As she was leaving, someone in the group said, About time someone shut up that old bat. Cue everyone breaking into fits of laughter because of the ridiculousness of the whole situation. Definitely left the store feeling much brighter. Dump your fiancé and date my daughter now. Hello, Mr. Reddit and members. I have listened to Mr. Reddit every day before work and even at work, so I figured it was time to share my entitled parent story. So this one happened last summer over 4th of July weekend. I work from home or at my office, so I barely go out into the wild as much, so I truly didn't believe there could ever be someone/people so mental and entitled in my life. But I was wrong. Cast. We've got me. We've got my fiance. We've got entitled mom, entitled kid, who looked about 19 to 21 years old and had a fake Valley Girl accent. We've got awesome cops 1 and 2. Just a super quick backstory. I always wanted a Mustang as a kid, and 2 years ago, I bought a red Shelby GT350 convertible. I met my lovely fiance a few months before the purchase of my Mustang. We both work in the financing world, and I proposed to her a month before July 4th. Okay, done. Story time. So the 4th of July, my fiance and I decided to take our families out on a pontoon ride and have a cookout on the beach later in the evening. So we went in my car with the top down to the local market to get all the supplies needed. The game plan was simple. She gets all the meat and sides for the boat and the cookout. I get the snacks and beverages for the whole day, and we will meet up at the register once we're done. I was standing at the chips section just looking around when I feel a tap on my shoulder. I quickly turned around, and there they are, the Mega Karen, The fake jewelry, hair, big sunglasses, tan, super tight clothes, and her spawn brat looking like a carbon copy of her mom. Me. Hello? Can I help you?
Yes, you are the owner of that big red car out there?
Me. Why, yes, I am.
That is such a nice car.
Entitled Kid.
Yeah, it's so cooler.
Oh no, Valley Girl accent. Me. Why, thank you. I've wanted one ever since I was a kid. Entitled Mom.
What do you do for a living?
Now, if I have learned anything from Mr. Reddit and Redditor, it's that you never tell a wild Karen who you are or where you work, or they will find you. So I simply told them I worked in marketing, and after 4 minutes of talking, I simply said, well, I was just in here to get some chips for the 4th. Entitled Mom.
Well, I think you're perfect for my daughter. She needs someone like you to support her.
Entitled Kid.
Yeah, I would look so hot in that car. Alrighty then, it is settled.
I was in shock at this conversation and believed I was being punked. Me. No, I am engaged. I hold up my phone showing her picture.
Ew, that's her? She is ugly. Did she force you to marry her?
Entitled Kid.
Yeah, she probably doesn't even know how to spend money.
Was she really asking a question or just this stupid? Me. Okay, that is rude. She is very pretty and intelligent, so I'm leaving now. Happy 4th.
No, you are not leaving. You are gonna date my daughter.
Me. No, will you please leave me alone?
Entitled Mom. No, you dump that pig now. Right now.
Entitled Kid.
Yeah, right now.
Me. No, leave me alone. I would never, nor will I ever date your gold-digging daughter. I grabbed 5 random bags of chips and bolted for the beverages. I met my fiancée at the registers and told her what just happened and just wanted to go. We get in the car and I turn my head to get my seatbelt when I hear my fiancée scream. Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid were pulling my fiancée out of the car and climbed in. I am not kidding. Entitled Mom.
Let's go, OP. We have work to do.
Me. What the heck? Get out of my car. My fiancé. I'm calling the police. Me. Great idea. Tell them I think a mental ward is missing some patients. I remove the keys from the car. Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid start reeing on how they deserve this car and my money because they are class, whatever that means. The police pull up, and before I could even think, Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid bolted to them like they were the cavalry and were just all over the poor officers. Entitled Mom.
Oh, officers, thank God you're here. That crazy woman just attacked my daughter and her fiancé. Arrest her, quickly. She may have a weapon.
Entitled Kid, fake sobbing.
She took my ring.
Entitled Mom.
Officers, hurry. Get her ring back.
Awesome Cops 1 and 2 just looked at me and my fiancé standing very calm, waiting for our turn to talk. Cop 1. Okay, just calm down. I need to know first who called. Before we could again open our mouths, Entitled Mom.
I did, officer. Please arrest her quickly.
Me, calmly. Officers, they harassed me in the store and assaulted my... Entitled Mom interrupts.
Oh no, he's going into shock. Call an ambulance, quickly, officer.
Entitled Kid.
Officer, my hubby is in trouble. Come here, OP.
Cop 2. Enough. This is what is going to happen. Cop 1 will collect both statements. I will go and watch the security tapes. I see a camera is pointed right at us. Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid go pale white, and Entitled Mom starts to really stammer.
No, that is not really necessary, officer. Just please take my word. That lady is crazy. Just look at her.
Let's go, OP and Entitled Kid. We need to go wedding shopping. She tries to open the door to the Mustang, but I locked it. Cop 2. Ma'am, why don't you want us looking at the tapes? Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid are sweating bullets. Entitled Mom.
I am trying to be a good person and spare her from being in bigger trouble than she has to be.
Then how about you stop lying, I thought. Cops 1 and 2 look at my fiancée standing calmly as she has a smile on her face. Cop 1. She looks pretty calm, ma'am. And why does she have scratch marks on her? Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid are scared at this point. They start yelling and threatening the officers with lawsuits because they won't arrest my girl right now. Entitled Kid is wanting me to hold her because she is scared. Just at that moment, the store manager comes out holding a Microsoft tablet and tells the officers that he watched the whole incident on camera and including my first interaction. Entitled Kid reaches, no scratch that lunges for the tablet. But Cop 1 was quicker. Cop 1 tells them they are both under arrest for assault. Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid go into ape mode, kicking, punching, screaming, and biting. The officers press more charges against both of them. The cops ask me if I want to press charges, and of course I do. Cops 1 and 2 both look at my car to make sure there isn't any damage, inform me on what to do next, and check my fiancée for any further injuries. They called an ambulance just in case to look her over. She was fine, tougher than any man I know. Cop 1 says I'm a lucky dude. I have a cool car and a good-looking girl. He says he would go mental too if he didn't have my life. We all laugh. I thank both the officers and thank the manager for their help. The manager offered some free steaks, but we declined, stating someone else could use a good fourth meal. As we drive away, I can hear Entitled Mom reeing so loud in the back seat of the squad car it drowned out my engine. When we went to court, it was discovered that she was married to a super wealthy businessman. She had apparently undiagnosed mental disorder as well as Entitled Kid. When the husband filed for divorce, Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid went completely nuts, threatening violence against anyone who tried to help him with the settlement. The divorce was really ugly, that both of them were treated for their mental disorders, but the judge discovered that both of them had not attended therapy or taken their medications in months. That explains a lot. Entitled Lady tries to grab my pregnant belly. Long-time lurker, first-time posting. I've never had a legit story till today. I'm still blown away it happened. We've got the Entitled Lady and we've got me. I'm 37 weeks pregnant with my first baby. Yay, gender is a surprise, we don't know. So I've got a big ol' round belly, very noticeable. I decided to get a burrito from one of my favorite hole-in-a-wall Mexican joints for lunch. I get there, put on my mask, waddle to the door, and hold it open for this lady coming in behind me and go to the register. This Entitled Lady and I don't interact. She didn't even thank me for holding the door, which I didn't care about. We're the only customers inside. I meet the owner at the register. I'm a long-time customer. She recognizes me, gushes about my belly, asks me how I'm doing, yada yada, quick friendly chat. I pay for my food, and owner heads to the kitchen to bag it up and is gone like 30 seconds. I then stepped aside to let this Entitled Lady go to the register next, even offering the path with a hand gesture. She starts to walk forward in my direction and sticks out her hand with clearly incoming intent on touching my belly. On instinct, I smacked her hand away and pivot the belly sideways before she could even touch me. I'm shocked, staring at her. She's shocked and starts to sputter while looking mad. Entitled Lady, clearly offended. What? What are you? Me interrupting. I'm very uncomfortable with you doing that. Entitled Lady still mad. Well, you didn't have to smack my hand. Me, incredulous. You didn't even ask. Just started reaching like a weirdo. At this point, she blushes and then clams up. I assume, hopefully, from realization and embarrassment at what she just tried to do. The owner came back with my food. I take the bag, thank the owner, and skedaddled out of there really quick. For those concerned, I used hand sanitizer in my car and washed my hands before eating. I'm still like, that happened? I had a good friend warn me about these weirdos when I got pregnant. Today was the first time it happened. Karen makes a scene over an accidental spill, then asks a friend to pretend to be a lawyer to threaten the restaurant. This was ages ago when I worked at a steakhouse. A lady, I'll call her Karen, came in and announced she had a party of 25 on their way. She was covered in gold chains, diamonds, and carried a massive Louis Vuitton handbag. She was snooty and rude to the hostess and the busboy as he pushed their table together. Finally, she and her party were seated and ordered. The server they got loved to entertain kids. She'd make up voices and act out scenes to make the food seem more fun. As usual, she expertly handled this table, entertaining the kids here and there. The server had a tray of their food and was leaning over to set it down when one of the kids got up to show her a drawing he had done. He pulled on her apron as she was bending down and it caused her to fall off balance. The tray moved dangerously to its tipping point, and I thought for sure she'd drop it, but she expertly maneuvered it to the tray stand. Or so we thought. Suddenly, Karen leaped from her seat and began frantically dumping the contents of her handbag onto the table. It took us a minute to understand the problem. A drop of raspberry on the tray had tipped over and dripped into the $4 million Louis Vuitton bag. The woman was yelling at the server that she had to pay for it. The server looked panicked and got the manager. The three of them inspected the bag to assess the damage. The manager notes there's a small wet spot in the purse, but nothing major. He asks if he's missing something, since she's saying the bag is ruined. Lady, right there, pointing to a spot about the size of a quarter. Manager, I can see that it's wet, but it's the same color as the bag's material, so I can't tell what it is. It was a pinkish color.
It's raspberry dressing. Your stupid server can't even hold a tray right. She dumped it in there.
She turns to the server and points at her face.
You are going to pay to replace this. I want a brand new one in the box.
Manager, hold on. I would be okay with that if your bag was destroyed, but this was a small spill, and we would be happy to pay to have it cleaned. The server is not paying for this. It was an accident, so the restaurant will be responsible.
No, my server needs to be held accountable. She should pay for it, not the restaurant. How do I know it wasn't intentional?
Server, ma'am, I'm very sorry, but it was an accident. Your nephew grabbed my apron as I was setting it down. It did cause it to tilt, but I was able to keep it upright. Lady tells the manager.
Now she's blaming my kid? Who the heck do you think you are? He's just a kid. You can't make up lies about him.
Upset at how she was talking to our server, and that the manager didn't defend her, I stepped in, took the manager aside, and told him everything that I'd seen. I confirmed the kid was the one who caused her to accidentally spill the dressing. A busboy came up behind me, and he stated he had seen the same. The manager returns to the table and tells her that she has two choices. She can leave it here to be cleaned, or bring in a receipt for reimbursement. Karen grits her teeth.
I want a new bag, in box, with receipt, so I know it's not a knockoff. And she must pay for it.
Manager, that is not going to happen. I'm very sorry for... Karen gets up and starts shoving things back in her bag.
You'll be hearing from my lawyer.
She spits at the server.
Can you get us all to-go boxes, or will you mess that up too?
The rest of the table looks uncomfortable. She orders the table to package up their food so they can go. I hand out to-go boxes to help the server, who looks like she's going to cry. The manager tells her to go into the back and that he'll drop the bill. I think everything is fine until I hear more yelling. Karen is trying to leave and has refused to pay, saying it should be comped for the inconvenience. He chased the party to their cars, where they got into a serious argument about payment. Finally, one of the other members of the party stepped up and paid the bill. The lady screamed at the man for doing it, calling him a jerk. Rather than getting a real attorney, she asked a friend of hers to pretend to be a lawyer. He called to threaten the restaurant, claiming to be from a local legal firm. He said if she didn't get a brand new bag, they'd sue, and she wanted proof it had been purchased by the server, not the restaurant. This backfired though, because as soon as the manager heard the word lawyer, he said he could no longer talk to them and they'd need to communicate with the restaurant's legal team. The guy tried backtracking, but the manager just gave out the phone number and hung up. The lawyer called back 3 times, but the manager would not speak to him. The legal team let us know later that when they called the firm he said he represented, they did not know him. When they finally talked to the caller, he admitted Karen had asked him to call, thinking we'd just throw money at her to make her go away. In the end, she had her purse cleaned and the restaurant paid for it. It cost $300. That time I got fired because of a lying parent. People of note, we've got my aunt who ran the convenience store. We've got the kid, a random kid who just wanted munchies. We've got entitled parent, the kid's mother who I never saw during all of this. And we've got me, the 15 to 16-year-old kid who worked at his uncle's store for $6 an hour. This was maybe about 10, maybe 11 years ago. It's also notable that I never met the entitled parent in this story. However, the entitled parent's actions led to my aunt firing me. Well, I kinda quit. It's weird to explain. I worked at my uncle's convenience store, and I was a kid making $6 an hour. I mostly did it for fun because my cousins would hang out with me during work and, of course, for food money, and had been working there for almost a year. My uncle told all of us we couldn't ask for a raise till we worked at least a year, and had already been yelled at by my aunt for running the store for my uncle, and had already been yelled at by my aunt for accepting counterfeit money. So over time, I became very good at spotting fake money and refused to accept it whenever someone came in the store with it. Was working an afternoon shift when the kid came in. He was around 7 to 10 and grabbed a double pack of pizza burgers. Very common where I was raised. Every store has a fridge dedicated to pizza burgers and a can of pop. I total everything up and it comes to about $4, give or take 50 cents, when I notice the kid is holding a counterfeit $5 bill. I sigh and tell the kid, "Sorry man, can't take your money, it's fake." The kid looks at me and goes, "Really? It's fake?" And I told the kid, "Yeah." Pulled a $5 out of the register and put the bills side by side and explained that the shade of blue on the bills were different. The reflective strip was missing, and the guy's face on the bill was in a different position, and the bill was slightly smaller than the real fiver. By the way, this occurred in Canada. Yes, I know, the weird Monopoly money. And told the kid I'm sorry again, but I couldn't accept his money. The kid understood and went to put the stuff back, but I told him I'd take care of it. The kid left, and I put the pack of pizza burgers and pop back, and finished my shift, no sweat. The next day, I wake up early and walk over to my aunt's house to open the store up for the morning shift. As I come into my aunt's house, I come upstairs and see my aunt who is talking to me, and she had let me into her room where the cash box and keys are to open the store. Except instead, she asks me to sit at the table so we could talk. She proceeds to explain that she got calls last night from entitled parent who screamed at my aunt about how I apparently stole her kid's $5 bill after he came in the store to buy food. I told the kid the fiver was fake, pocketed it, and told him to scram. I explained to her my side of the story, but my aunt just shook her head and said if I stayed working at the store, she'd lose customers. Entitled parent said her family won't ever go to the store again, and my aunt didn't want to lose customers and left it there in an awkward silence. I knew she was going to fire me, so I told my aunt, "It's okay, Auntie, I'll stop working," and quit my job then and there. She thanked me for understanding, and I just nodded and went to leave, but stopped and took out my wallet and took out one of my fivers and gave it to my aunt and asked her, "Give it to the kid if you see him," and went back home. And that's the story of how I quit/got fired by my first job because of a counterfeit $5 bill. A kid who did nothing wrong and a lying jerk of a parent. Like to say right here as well, I'm not calling my aunt a jerk or trying to call her out. I'm not mad at her or the kid, just the entitled parent who gave her kid a fake fiver, then got mad because her kid didn't get his food. Entitled mom is forcing me to marry cousin to make her a citizen. Before you call BS and start joking around saying Sweet Home Alabama, 1. Believe me, I wish this was BS, but unfortunately, it's an actual situation I'm facing. 2. We are Dominican. Don't know if that changes everything. 3. I hate that song. I'm 20 and male. My cousin is 19 and female. Spanish was my first language. I have a third cousin in the Dominican Republic. They are not well off in that country, and her mom is a little neglectful. At this point, it feels like my mom cares more about her than me, but whatever. She deserves it. She's a good kid who does well in school and wants to move to the US to go to nursing school. She can't, however, because she isn't a legal citizen. My mom decided that it would be the best plan for me to go to the Dominican Republic in June or July and marry my third cousin to make her legal. She brought this up a few years ago, but I thought she was joking. Apparently she wasn't, because recently she brought this plan up again, but she actually is talking about how she's already booked flights for the Dominican Republic and everything. What the heck? I'm in a relationship already, and my mom literally told me that she doesn't give a hoot about my personal life. All she cares about is going to the Dominican Republic and forcing me to marry my cousin. Thankfully, I talked about the plan with my significant other, and they are supportive. Due to what's going on and not knowing if it's going to get worse, I think it's safe to say we are not flying out there. But my mom, for some reason, still acts like we are still going. Basically, I marry her and stay married for a year, then we divorce amicably. My mom pockets any money that's made from this, if any. When I try to downright refuse this was met with screaming, physical anger, and threats to kick me out. I'm afraid to go to any family members because I don't know what's going to happen. What would you do if you were in this situation? Would you go ahead and marry her, or would you absolutely not? Please let me know. Fire me before I quit? I ruin your life. Since I'm still in school, I took a job at a bakery of types which I won't name. The place has bread in the name, but also sells overpriced salads and sandwiches. I worked there for close to a year, where I had this boss named Betty. Not her real name, of course. Betty and I didn't get along whatsoever. She had gotten the previous general manager to quit because she had an affair with him, and she threatened to tell his wife if he didn't leave. He quickly left the job, and she was promoted to the position. I didn't like her, but I have to respect the dedication to be the general manager of a small store. When I first started working there, I was respectful, but she would do things that would get on my nerves. For instance, I would clean all the places I would be hired to do, and once I was done and relaxed for maybe 5 minutes, she would run out of the manager's office screeching, "Why aren't you working?" I would tell her, of course, I did my job, and as a cashier, if nobody is there to help, then I didn't have anything to do. She would glare at me. Then I would see her, accidentally, drop an entire pot of brewed coffee onto my freshly mopped floor for me to clean. So I learned quickly to always look busy. Once she realized I was going to kneel and kiss the ground she walked on, she started dropping my hours. The store ran on a Game of Thrones type politics for who got promotions and raises. Somehow, all her friends were managers and would bully the rest of us. She was barely at work. She would drive to my job clock just in case corporate decided to check her hours. So she was essentially stealing hours. When you clocked in, it printed out a small piece of paper telling when you clocked in. She would just drop them on the floor for me to clean up. I would usually pick them up and stick them into a pocket. So this led to me finding Betty's clock in and out stubs in my pocket at my house. This will be important for later. Also, she was white and most of the staff were not. One day at work, she walked out and told us, "When you're on the clock, I own you." When we all reacted to look at her, she backpedaled and was like, "I didn't mean it like that." This will be important for later. So after a while, I got sick of practically begging for hours, so I went to my current job, but decided I merely wanted to drop my hours, which were already barely a day a week. But suddenly, when I got my new job, she scheduled me every single day of an entire week. She never did that, even when we were on semi-good terms. So I obviously told her I had a new job and couldn't do this. After that, I went home and called my friend, who was still working there, to tell him I was going to quit tomorrow. He has a habit of putting his phone on speaker when he's cleaning at work, so Betty overheard this, obviously. The next day, I walk in and go through the respectful motions of saying, "Thank you for the opportunity," and blah blah blah. Betty let me get through the entire speech before she said, "Oh yeah, I was meaning to tell you, you're fired." I was so blindsided and upset, I cussed her out. My mom raised me to treat people with respect, but this jerk really upset me. So I left and was mad about being fired before I could quit, but didn't push the issue. I'm only 18 and I already had another job. I wasn't expecting Betty to give me a good reference anyway. I would have completely left it alone if it wasn't for the district manager, Ben, not his real name, texting me. The revenge. He thought I was still working there, so I explained to him I was fired. He was stunned due to the fact that I was a decent employee. He asked why she had let me go, and I explained it to him, and he was angry. He clarified that she fired me before I quit, and I said yes. He was mad that she did this and asked if there was anything else she might have done. I kind of just vented to him for a bit. When I told him about her hateful remarks, he asked if anyone else would collaborate with me. I forgot to mention that she slowly fired and forced people to quit and replaced them with her friends and family, which according to company policy she couldn't do, something about conflict of interest. I asked all the people who were working that day if they could, and a few said they would, so they did. But one did even better. My one coworker, Andy, is convinced he's the next big vlogger, so he always has his phone out or just uses audio recordings for hours for a chance to catch a funny clip. I've watched his content, and let me say, it's just super cringe. But turns out he labels each recording by the day and times, so when he checked, he found her making hateful remarks. I got a brilliant idea, and with my other fired or forced to quit coworkers, we decided to scour Andy's recordings. We found some great moments of Betty saying controversial things or just being nasty. Like once a guest sneezed on the baked pastries, and when a coworker told her, she laughed it off and said nobody would know. But this wasn't enough for me. I try to avoid conflict, but when I'm in a situation, I'll follow it through. I looked her up on Facebook and found out that she was married. Nobody knew this, so when she had the affair with the other manager and basically blackmailed him, she was also married. I don't think anyone ever cared enough to find out because she was a nasty old lady. So I found the old manager's Mark Facebook and found out he and his wife were separated. Turns out, even after he quit, Betty was still trying to blackmail money out of him. When he didn't, she told his wife anyway, causing his wife to divorce him and basically leave him to go live with his parents. I did some research, and in my state, blackmail or extortion is a third-degree penalty, which has a max of 7 years in prison with a fine of over $10,000 to the victim. So I told the old manager what my plan was for her. He agreed to call the cops on her, but I asked if he'd wait until I finished my part first. He said he'd give me a week. So I met with District Manager Ben and showed him all of our evidence. the recordings and the written statements from my other ex-coworkers and people who were still working there. I also gave Ben the slips of paper when Betty clocked in and then left and returned 8 to 10 hours later to clock out. Ben thanked me for the information and then I left. A few days later, while walking past the store, I noticed it was closed in the middle of the day. I texted a guy who still worked there and he told me everything. Turns out, Ben first checked the security cameras to see if she was there for the full time she claimed to be. Big surprise, she wasn't. So Ben decided to investigate the store's expenses, since if she's lying about her time, what else could she be stealing? He found out she was stealing money from the store. The guy didn't fully explain how she was, but just that she was. Turns out she was breaking a lot of health and safety codes and used the money for repairs and etc. for herself. So she was fired immediately, along with all of her minions, and that left barely anybody to run the store. They shut down to clean up the store and fix things she didn't make. So she's out of a job, and Mark told her husband, with photo proof, that she cheated on him. But Mark phrased it so it seemed like she still was. So Betty's husband flips out and decides to divorce her, and Betty is the type to post everything on Facebook. So she's begging someone to let her stay, but all of her friends and family totally bailed on her. So she was living in her car looking for a job. That's when Mark decides to sue her for extortion, so she scrambles to find a lawyer. And to make it even worse, the company decided to sue her for all the money she stole and plus all the repairs and lost revenue while the store is closed. Betty's life is crap. She had to sell her car for drastically under what it's worth to pay for all the legal trouble. Mark told me bits and pieces of her crying in the courtroom, but not too much. I never was super close with him. Last I heard of Betty is she was living with her sister, who definitely hates her. To think she would have avoided all of this if she just let me quit. Karen, do you need a friend? This is what I get for going to the store instead of ordering groceries to be delivered. So with this stuff going on, I've been dutifully staying in my apartment like a decent human being and limiting any time I spend outside. Unfortunately, this has been heck on my partner's mental health and the depression is real. So I decided, forget it. We're both food boys and he likes cookies. There's a Giant the next block over. So I get dressed, put on my sweet Disney mask, go on Etsy, the designs are wonderful, and head out to get my partner some cookies. Now for reference, my style is hobo chic. So sweats, sneaks, graphic tee, and a hoodie. Keep that in mind. I go into Giant and head for the cookie aisle. I'm considering if I want to do Oreos or if I want to be fancy and get Pepperidge Farm. Those are important questions of life. When an older woman who is very short asks if I can grab something for her off the top shelf. Of course, I say yes because she was nice enough to ask. I'm a simple guy. I hand her the item and go back to my contemplation. As I decide to get them both, I hear the I've worked retail and I've worked food service, so I know the sound of a wild Karen when I hear one. Me. What's up? Karen.
What's up? Is that how you treat?
I have zero in the way of spoons and even less patience. Me. Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to look at me and try that line of thinking again. Karen.
Who the?
Me. Hey. Uh-huh. Let me tell you what we're not gonna do. I need you to woo and chill. I know you know better. Karen still looks mad but doesn't say anything. Me. Now, I can help you find an employee if you want, but what you will not do is yell at me. I am only here to get cookies. I point at my stomach. I'm a thick boy. Me. Not that I need them. Karen cracks a small smile. Gotcha. Me. But at this point, I'm committed to this. I didn't choose thick life. It chose me. Karen starts to crack and laughs a little before all of a sudden starting to tear up. I'm 6 foot, 300 pounds, and black. A crying Karen is a bit detrimental to my continued freedom. Me. You okay? Karen.
Yeah, it's just that this is the first time I've laughed in a while. My husband is in the hospital.
Me. He caught it? Karen.
Yeah.
Me. I'm not sure if it means anything coming from some cookie guy, but I hope he recovers. Karen smiled and walked away. While she didn't apologize for popping off, I'm glad it didn't escalate further. Her husband's condition doesn't excuse what I'm sure would have been an awful tirade, but it does serve as a reminder that crap is bad for everyone. You're shopping for someone else? Yeah, right. So some context. Because of what's been going on, 2 families within my family's friend group are unable to leave their houses due to one or more of them being immunocompromised. One of the families gets groceries delivered to their house, but sometimes my mom and I will go buy stuff for them. But the other family consists of 2 people. They don't go through as much food and they had a ton saved up. So when they need something, my mom and I will go to buy it for them. This story is about Family B. Last week, my mom sent me to the store to not only pick up shopping for our family, but for Family B too. One of the items on the list was hand sanitizer, and because some people are crazy, they will do anything to get it. I went into the store, fully expecting there not to be any left, but was able to find some, albeit small bottles. Now, the sign said 1 bottle per household, and I had asked a store employee if it would be alright if I got 2. 1 for my family and 1 for Family B. I got the okay and continued to shop. As I was looking for bagels, the bread section was torn apart and things were literally everywhere. This lady, entitled Mom, comes up to me and taps me on the shoulder. Me, somewhat freaked out as I didn't see her come up behind me. Sorry, I'll move a bit. Entitled Mom.
Why do you have 2 bottles of hand sanitizer in your cart? It's 1 per family.
Me. I'm shopping for 2 families right now. I find the bagels I was looking for, put them in my cart, then get started on getting the shopping for Family B, walking away from the entitled Mom as I pulled up the list.
Hey!
She grabs me by the shoulder and yanks me away from my cart.
You can't have 2 bottles. It's 1 per family.
Me, shaken up, as I don't like being grabbed by strangers. And I said, I'm shopping for 2 families. The entitled Mom looks at my cart and scoffs. She reaches in and grabs one of the bottles of hand sanitizer.
Like heck you are. I need this for my family, and there's none left. So I'll just be taking this.
I grab her arm and yank the bottle from her grasp, put it back in my cart, and start walking off.
Stop her! She just stole from me. Thief! Someone stop her.
A store employee stops me and asks what happened.
That kid,
pointing at me,
is taking 2 bottles of hand sanitizer for 1 family, and there's none left, and I need 1.
Me. First off, I'm not a kid. Second off, I'm shopping for a family friend who can't leave their house due to a compromised immune system. The store employee sighs. Employee. Okay, ma'am, referring to me. You can go. Sorry for the inconvenience. I leave, but as I am, I hear the entitled mother yelling and berating the store employee. I finished shopping and left the store. Family B was very happy to finally have some hand sanitizer, and so was my mom. Pick your battles. Several years ago, before we had the term Karen for certain customers, I decided to buy a grill. A little backstory. I worked the oil field and had told my crew if we met certain goals, I would build a kitchen trailer. My guys came through in shining fashion, and it was now up to me to hold up to my end of the bargain. Granted, I would be spending a lot of my own money so that when I leave, I'll have a cool kitchen to take camping or for parties, but this has nothing to do with the incident. I ordered a very expensive custom grill through a retail outlet that shall not be named. This grill was amazing, and you would hope so for $12,000. I know that's crazy high, but this was fully custom made. I knew the exact second it arrived because the store manager called me asking when I would come pick it up. Stores don't like having too much inventory sitting around, especially something that expensive. I said I would be there that evening. I showed up, and while I was excited about the grill, I was in a bad mood. Work just sucked that day. I was waiting by customer service, and they said it might be a bit before they could get it out to me. No worries, I'll wait. While I'm standing there, I see Karen walk in. She looks at me and beelines in my direction, then in a huffy voice,
Young man, are you busy? I need help finding some things.
I'm wearing a tan work shirt with my name and my company name, very different from the store uniform. I obviously don't work here. I'm waiting for something, but I don't work here. Maybe ask them. I point to a nearby employee. Karen.
Why can't you just do your job? Stop being lazy and help me.
I'm not in the mood for this, but I'm trying to be nice. Ma'am, I point to the company name on my shirt. This is where I work. Then wave to the surrounding store. Not here. You need to talk to someone else. Karen starts screeching.
Stop being lazy and do your job.
That's it. Listen, you moron. How can I say it any simpler? I don't work here. Now get out of my face. I'm guessing Karen has never been yelled at like this before because her mouth just hangs open as she walks away. I thought this was over, but boy was I wrong. Within a few minutes, I see her approaching again with what is clearly a manager, pointing to me and saying,
"That's him. That's the one."
They got to me and she goes on.
"This person refused to assist me and then was yelling at me when I tried to remind him what his job was. I demand that you fire him."
This manager looked confused, then tries to placate her. Manager: "Okay, well, we can't have our employees treating customers this way, so you are going to need to turn in your uniforms, and..."
"Wrong choice, buddy."
Manager stopped talking. I might have gone along with it and laughed it off, but the smug, satisfied look on Karen's face was infuriating me.
"You know I don't work here. I'm not playing along. You have two choices right now. Either you can find a way to get it through her stupid head that I don't work here, or I can leave, and you can find someone else to buy the grill I'm waiting for now, after you refund my deposit."
Manager's face goes white. He was clearly doing some real hard thinking. "Ma'am, this man doesn't work here. If you would like, I will personally help you find whatever you need." The fury on her face was satisfying to see. Knowing she wasn't going to get her way made my whole day better. Entitled parents invite themselves on a vacation and then complain it's not good enough for them. I was talking with my mom the other day and mentioned a family we hadn't seen since I was about 10. She told me that after a vacation they joined us on, they decided to stop being friends with them. Here is the story. My parents planned a vacation to take me and my brother to Yellowstone when we were 8 and 10. They told the entitled parents about the vacation they were planning, and they invited themselves to go with us. They figured it would be fun for us to all go together, as they had kids the same age as me and my brother. Not wanting to be rude to the family or cause issues, since we went to a Bible study at their house every Sunday, my parents included them in our plans. My mom warned them the cabins we were staying in were extremely rustic. Think no walls separating bedrooms, mismatched furniture, and small. They said that would be fine and had my mom book the cabin next to them. Everything seemed to be going pretty well until our vacation actually started. My parents wanted to start driving to Yellowstone fairly early. We live in Utah, so they wanted to leave around 7 or 8. The entitled parents didn't show up until 11, and my parents couldn't get a hold of them before this. They weren't answering their phones, so this ticked my mom off, and she asked the entitled parents what happened to leaving early, and they told her,
"Oh, we like to sleep in on weekends."
My dad told my mom to just let it go and to try to still have a good day. When we arrived, the entitled parents instantly turned their noses up at our accommodations and said they wouldn't be
good enough for their kids.
My mom told the entitled parents she had warned them that they were rustic. The entitled parents had friends in the main part of Yellowstone and told my parents that they were going to go visit them. My mom reminded them that they bought food for dinner for all of us, and the entitled parents assured my mom they would be back for dinner at 7. So my parents cooked a really nice dinner for everyone. We had steak, potatoes, corn, dessert, and waited on the entitled parents to show up. At 8, when the family still wasn't there, they decided to eat without them as they had no way of contacting them. We went to bed, and around midnight the entitled parents showed up. They told my parents the cabins they booked weren't good enough for them, and they would be staying with their other friends for the rest of their vacation. They also said it was a mistake to include my family on their trip because of the cabins that were booked, and they had to start driving so early in the day to accommodate us. My mom and dad had enough of their attitude and reminded them that they were the ones to join us without being invited, and said they were fine with the cabins we booked and our travel plans for leaving. They also told them they were inconsiderate for bailing on dinner and should have told them if they had no intention of having it with us. At that point, the other family left, and we never saw them again. I'm your server and the manager. Checkmate, Karen. A few years ago, I started serving at a family-owned restaurant in my town. I quickly became close with the owner and the owner's daughter and helped them with more than just serving. I became head server and then bar manager. Since it was a smaller restaurant, I kept serving because I made way more money that way. We had a special every day for wine. We had a shelf filled with wine bottles. Each shelf was either 15, 25, or 50% off. It was a great deal, and typically we sold it for about $5 to $10 more than we were paying per bottle of wine. I don't know if this is well known, but a lot of restaurants upcharge their drinks quite a bit in order to make a profit, obviously. So it was a great deal for people. One day, a lady comes in with her friends and immediately starts causing problems. I end up taking over for the server who got them right after they ordered their drinks because they were so rude to her, and it was her first full day of serving by herself. The lady ends up ordering one of the 25% off bottles, which ended up being around $7 more than you could buy it for at the store. How do I know this? At the end of the meal, I can hear her talking to her friends about how she's going to get the bottle of wine for free. She knew I was right there and could probably hear it, but I was just the server and probably dumb, also overheard at an earlier time. I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid. At this point, I'm so ready to tell her no, I actually wonder by a few times so she can try her crap. Sure enough, she snaps at me, and I mean literally snaps her fingers and calls me over and said,
"I want you to get your bar manager. I looked online and found this bottle of Merlot for this much, and you charged me this much plus $7. I'm not paying this ridiculous overcharge, and I also want to talk to them about the service here today too."
Now, not to toot my own horn, I was a good server. There weren't many people in the restaurant at the time, so I know I didn't neglect them. I substituted food for them and didn't charge them any upcharges, even though a double-baked stuffed potato cost more than a side of chips, but whatever. She looked at me with such a smug face until I smiled back at her and said, "Actually, I am the bar manager." I've never seen such a comical change in expression outside of a sitcom. She said,
"You're the bar manager?"
and I smiled and nodded and said, "Every restaurant will charge you more for products than they buy them for. This is how we make a profit. I'm not going to be discounting the wine. As far as issues with service, I would be happy to listen to your complaints and take them into consideration for the future." She spluttered, grumbled, and told me,
"Well, I'll never be coming back here."
"Okay, good riddance, lady." And she didn't come back. Her friends did, though, and became some of my favorite regulars. They told me a few months later that the only reason they went out with her was because she was one of their sister-in-laws and didn't have any friends. I wonder why. Entitled parent tries to coach own daughter on how to treat retail staff rudely. So this is a story about my own mother. Yup, she's the entitled parent. About 2 years ago, I bought the most comfortable bra I had ever bought before. I only had it for about 3 months until the underwire broke free and it started to poke me, which really hurt. It happened at university, and when I got home that afternoon, I told my mother about it. It had cost me $60 and was only 3 months old, so maybe it was just defective. They really should last longer than 3 months, so I was going to go to the store and ask for an exchange or a refund. The only thing was, I did not have a receipt. I took good care of my stuff, so I did not think to keep the receipt. I also was not a part of their brand's customer rewards service, as I only bought products there once in a while if they were on a sale, so they could not look up a name or membership or profile with them. I told this to my mom and wondered what I should do.
"Well, that's not okay,"
my mother started.
"You do know what to do, right? Let them know that it is illegal for them to sell faulty products. Do not leave the store until you have that refunded. If the cashier says they can't refund it without a receipt, then ask to speak to the manager. They'll sort you out."
My mother never worked in retail herself, but I, at this point in time, had been for about 4 to 5 years. I know the annoyance of the phrase, "Can I speak to your manager?" and was not going to enforce that on an innocent civilian. "No, I'm not going to do that," I replied. "That would just be rude."
"Well, I could do it for you then. I'll just say, my daughter bought a defective product, which is illegal to sell, and we demand a refund because according to the law..."
"No, we're not going to do that either. It's not the cashier's fault that it happened to be defective, so I'm not going to treat them like it is. I'll just go in, explain my situation, and ask what their policy is about refunds without a receipt." So you know what? Ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what I did. I walked in, found the cashier, and explained that my $60 item broke in 3 months, and I did not have the receipt in the friendliest and kindest way possible, because I know how much working retail sucks. The lady said that she did need some proof of purchase and asked me what day I bought it on. She was so kind and lovely as well. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, I looked at transactions 3 months ago and found the date of the exact $60 purchase. I gave her the date, she typed that into her computer and found a transaction on that date for $60, which was no doubt mine. She printed that off, scanned it, and refunded the original purchase, all while a different attendant found the same item in my size off the shelf and brought all 3 color options to me in case I wanted the replacement in a different color. I chose the original color, thanked both ladies for their amazing help, and walked out of the store with my new and non-defective item. See, Mom, you can't have a social interaction without belittling retail staff, acting like a know-it-all, and God forbid, demand to speak to the manager. Just be kind. Don't mess with a sweet old lady's cat when the neighborhood has a kid who knows everyone. A little about me first. I was a scrapper as a kid and knew everyone in the neighborhood. I made money babysitting kids and knew the older kids because I was permitted to roam. I'm also one of those people that people will tell their darkest secrets to, and I had earned a lot of trust in my neighborhood. I was a pack leader, and people generally did what I said. Okay, enough about me. On to the revenge. This is an old story, back from when I was young. I can't remember the exact age, but it was around 9 or 10, which would be the early 90s. I lived in a small neighborhood. There were not many kids, and the ones there were mostly older. The brunt of the community was older people. The neighborhood was built in the early 40s and filled up with people after WW2, and many of them stayed there. On the block south of me was this old jerk who pretty much hated everyone. If something that was a kid's, like a ball or a frisbee, and the kid asked for it back, he would destroy it right in front of them. One time, a kid parked his bike in the swale, city-owned property that was outside the home, and this jerk took the bike and destroyed it. This jerk has a major vendetta against cats. We did not have a feral cat problem, but many people, including my own, had cats that were indoor/outdoor. We were not on the main road, and there was little traffic. Most of the cats didn't go far from home, usually just went out chasing pigeons and a few garter snakes that were around. They always came home at night unless they ended up in this jerk's yard. He started by trapping cats and taking them to the pound. Many families in the neighborhood would get calls about their cats being turned in and having to get them. My family, who were well known at the pound, my mother was an animal lover to an annoying extent, and we were there often, would get calls to inform us that one of our cats was there. When Jerk found out that trapping cats wasn't getting rid of them is when he escalated. He started poisoning them, but many lived because the symptoms were caught early enough, so he escalated again. And that is when crap got serious. Suddenly, cats all over the neighborhood were dying, and no one could figure out why. It wasn't until the cat of a sweet old lady got out of the house. She was indoor only, but got out during a package delivery. 3 days later, the cat showed back up sick. This woman was not poor, and this was a costly cat. Angora, I think. Maybe Persian. It was a white fluff ball, and this woman loved that cat. She took the cat to the vet, and it was determined that the cat had a belly filled with glass. But the damage was too massive, and the cat died while at the vet's office. This woman was furious. She got around to the neighborhood, and it was me who told her that I thought I knew who did it. I thought this because my mom and I were frequent visitors to the pound. They told my mother who it was that kept bringing our cats, and with a little prodding, we found that all the cats that came from our neighborhood were brought in by the same person. I told this wonderful older woman who I thought did it, and she was furious. She got in her caddy and rolled up to this jerk's house and confronted him. I was a bit of a free-roam kid back then, had to be home by the time the streetlights came on, so I made sure to ride my bike over to see what the fireworks would be like. She rolled up and pulled in his driveway, got out of the car and pounded on the door. I mean pounded. Jerk opens the door and she begins softly, saying that something terrible had happened to her cat and that she was just going door to door trying to find out if anyone knew what happened. Jerk responded with a reaction. I wasn't close enough to hear everything that was said because of this jerk's hatred of kids, but I was close enough to hear what happened next. Sweet old lady went from 0 to 100 in .001 seconds. She poked her finger in his chest and said, "I think it was you, you cranky old jerk. I know that you've been taking cats to the pound, and I bet you are the one that killed my princess." Yes, that was the cat's name. This jerk just smirked and said, "Yeah, glass and cat food and some catnip will always work to get those destructive beasts out of the neighborhood. I will keep on doing it, and you can't do nothing to stop me." Sweet old lady hauled and slapped this jerk across the face and turned around and walked back to her car. I was good friends with Sweet Old Lady and often spent time at her house after school because she was alone and needed some company. She was always very kind to me. When I went over next, I asked what happened after she left. She told me she called the cops, but without concrete proof, there was nothing that they could do. When they spoke with the jerk, he admitted to trapping cats and taking them to the pound, but never said anything about the glass. Sweet Old Lady was beside herself because she wanted justice for Princess. I got an evil grin on my face and said, "Don't worry, you'll get justice." She looked at me and smiled and nodded her head. You see, this all happened in the first part of October. I knew just about every kid and teen in the neighborhood, free roam thing, and I told all of them what happened. The total was about 20 of them, with 12 of them being teens who could drive and had their own incomes. I told them all what we should do. I laid out the entire plot, and we all worked to get things that we needed. When Halloween rolled around, I was unfortunately not able to fully participate in this because I sadly got grounded for getting into a fight with a kid in the neighborhood. Halloween night, about 15 people late in the night converged on Jerk's house. As luck would have it, he was not home at the time. His car was still there, but a neighbor relayed to the group that he had left in a car with someone else. The group shattered every window and mirror in his car. Once the windows were broken, they opened the door and destroyed the interior. They poured sand in the gas tank and did something to the engine block. Don't remember what. They broke every window in the house, including a sliding glass door in his backyard. All screens were shredded, and they put super glue in all the door locks and super glued the mailbox shut. Once the screen was torn, they gained entry. They didn't steal anything, but they destroyed the inside of the house. They spray painted everything, including the words, "For Princess," on a wall inside the home. Polaroids were taken, and I got to see the destruction. They also, just to put the cherry on top, egged and TP'd the place. This, from what I was told, took about 3 hours in total, and neither the neighbor next to him or across the street said a darn thing or called the cops. The group left and went back to their homes like it was just a typical Halloween night. I found out from the neighbors. I was very well known in my neighborhood, and people tended to tell me things with ease, that the total amount of damage was around $20,000. This was 1991, so a ton of money. And it seems that the group destroyed some very precious things that he had. Now, the one thing that they did that I am not proud of is they dumped the urn that contained his late wife's ashes. I think that was a jerk move, but I still believe that he deserved it. This jerk was furious, but no one saw a darn thing. It took him about a year to get everything fixed. He told the neighbors that his car insurance would not cover the damage to the car and he had to buy a new car. And the car was one of those old Lincoln land boats that probably had another $15,000 to $20,000 onto the total. Police were called, but there was nothing found. This was before DNA and all that fancy CSI stuff, so it was pretty dust for prints and be on their merry way. He tried to go after Sweet Old Lady, but it fizzled. There was no proof she had anything to do with it. The great thing about all of this, there was never another cat that vanished from the area. The jerk died about a year before I left the neighborhood at 18. From what I heard from a neighbor, he was raging about what happened to anyone who would listen. Once I was able to roam again, I was able to get the Polaroids from a friend who gave them to my mom in a sealed envelope. I went to Sweet Old Lady and showed her the pics. She just smiled and gave me $20. She lived for another 3 years. She was wonderful during that time. I wish I still had the Polaroids, but they were lost when I got kicked out of an apartment due to my jerk ex. But that is a story for another sub. Entitled mother yells at me for ignoring her son when she invited him to eat lunch with my friend and I. This was a few days ago, and I still think she's crazy. As a backstory, my mother has this friend who's very anti-video games, let's call her Entitled Mom, and has a son who I'm friends with, nice kid. Growing up, she would just invite her son to eat dinner with us without even telling us. Nice kid would just show up. To be fair, he would usually text me giving me a heads up that his mom is too lazy to make him dinner, so he's been told to come over. I thought that was very entitled and strange, but my mother didn't seem too busy. Anyway, back to the story. My mother had some coupons for pizza, so she told me I could order some pizza for lunch and have a friend over to play video games or something while she goes to work. This is exactly what I do. I ordered pizza, and my friend comes over to play competitive CSGO with me on our laptops while we eat. When playing competitive CSGO, you get banned from playing competitive matches for a certain amount of time. This will be important later. Then suddenly, I hear a knock on the door. Apparently, somehow, Entitled Mom found out I was getting pizza and playing video games with a friend. Knowing that we were playing video games, I'm still not sure why she would get him to come over. Anyway, he just shows up and I let him inside. He explained his mother found out I was getting pizza and playing CSGO with my friend. I didn't want to turn him away, so I let him eat some pizza with us. To not be rude, we talked to him in between games. After an hour, he leaves, and I don't give it another thought. After maybe 20 minutes, I get a call on my phone. At first I ignore it, but it rings again and again until I check who it is. My heart sank when I saw the caller ID. Then she sent me a very angry text.
Call me now.
Thinking it could be very serious, I pick up the phone. Entitled Mom.
Excuse me, but why did you ignore my son when he came over for your playdate?
Me.
He said you were playing your stupid video games.
Sorry, I didn't know your son was coming, so I started a competitive—
Then you pause it and talk to him. He walked for 15 minutes to get to your apartment. What's wrong with you?
It's a 2-minute walk. Me. I'm sorry, I can't pause.
What do you mean you can't pause a game to talk to my son? Don't tell me you can't pause a game. I played Pac-Man before, and I can pause. Don't lie to me.
Me. It's an online game with other people and my friends, including a friend that came over to my house to—
I know that, but you knew my son was going to come for your playdate.
Me. I don't understand what you want me to do. Nobody ever invited him. You just got him to show up.
Yes, but you must pause your game.
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to leave a game just to play with your son. By leaving the game, I give an unfair disadvantage to my friends on my team and an unfair advantage to the other team. This was no use. I honestly think it would be easier to teach calculus to a plant and for that plant to end up going to Harvard or something. This crazy person had an extremely thick skull.
You know that's what the corporate man wants you to think. Video games are not your life. Your parents did a really bad job raising you. You need to have some manners. Who do you think you are talking to? You know what? Give me your laptop. I need to teach you some manners.
I hang up. I really don't know what she wants me to do. Her logic is, oh, I invited my son to your house and I want you to drop everything and play with him. So this crazy lady actually came over and scolded me again. She said it was rude how I hung up, and she says I need more manners. She basically repeated herself for 10 minutes, and after her lecture, she asked for my computer. I of course said no, because I have to take online classes.
No, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you to.
That crazy lady then barges into my room and sees my laptop on my desk and tries to take it. Since it's a giant laptop, I tell her it's a really old laptop from 2003 and it's for an antique laptop collection.
Okay, where is your video games laptop?
I just told her to get lost and she just left, realizing she might not have the right to invite her kid to my house for dinners anymore, so she backed off. A Karen tries to get the owner's daughter fired. This was about 2 years ago when my dad owned a pub. I was 14 and old enough to chirp in by taking orders for the restaurant, cleaning tables, etc. And one day we had just opened and my dad had gone down to the basement to change one of the kegs. As I was sitting at the bar talking to our new employee, showing them what to say, my dad had taught me himself, and the employee was barely out of college. The employee asked if it was okay if she quickly went to the bathroom since there weren't any customers. It was only 4 p.m. and the locals normally started pouring in at 6, so I said it was okay. As I'm drinking my cola, Karen arrives.
Excuse me?
Me. Hello? Karen.
I want a,
lists her drink.
And be quick with it.
Me. I'm sorry, I'm not working. She cut me off.
Stop lying. I've seen you clean the tables. I know you work here.
Me, shocked. I'm sorry, Miss Karen, but I'm not working today, and even if I was, I couldn't get you your drink since I'm not allowed behind the bar.
Stop lying. You're here, so you must be working. Get me my drink.
Me. Miss Karen, She cuts me off again.
You're so rude. I know the owner, you know. I could get you fired.
At this point, our new employee returns. I'll call her Nice Employee. Nice Employee. Hello, welcome to our inn. What can I get for you?
Get me the owner. I want this girl fired.
I gave the Nice Employee a look that basically said, get him, my dad. I was holding in tears at this point, and Nice Employee could see that. Nice Employee. I'll just grab him from downstairs. One moment. Karen.
Good.
Turns out my dad had been upstairs the entire time Karen had been here and heard it all. "Dad, what's the meaning of this?" he firmly asked Karen. Karen,
Mr. R, this employee of yours needs to be...
My dad cut her off. My dad, firmly, "She's not my employee." Karen,
What? But I've seen her clean up and take orders, and...
Dad cuts her off again. "That's because she's my daughter." Karen turns to look at me, who is still trying to calm down, and speaks.
If you really are his daughter, then why couldn't you get me my drink?
Nice employee, me and my dad were shocked and in disbelief by this, but I managed to speak. Nee, almost in tears. "I'm 14. I can't get that for you." Karen went pale, and before she could speak, my dad did. "Now get out of my pub. You're banned for the rest of the month." We haven't seen her since, mainly because about 10 months later, my dad sold the pub. Why deaf people don't like rude people. I'm a delivery driver for a pizza place. I had a delivery to the far corner of our delivery district, 15 minutes from our store. The customer ordered a no contact but did not leave a tip yet, meaning I had to get this guy to come out and sign a paper to leave a tip. Very much not no contact. It's kind of silly when people do that, but in the past I've never had an issue with that combo. I should preface this by saying I am extremely hard of hearing, bordering legally deaf. I can't understand speech over the phone through most audio, like speakers or a microphone, online videos, even just watching TV. And I heavily rely on lip reading and subtitles when American Sign Language is not available. So a Ring doorbell is not an option when I'm behind the camera. I also need to make clear I was born with my hearing and lost it gradually starting at 15 and got to my current state by 18. I don't sound deaf. I am in speech therapy to keep my voice from weakening due to my hearing loss. I arrived at the door of my delivery and did my standard put the throwaway box down, then our hot bag, then the order on top. I noticed the Ring bell was already activated and there was an extremely garbled voice coming from the speaker. I couldn't understand what he was saying, so I just did my normal speech and waited. I told him he needed to sign for it and to please come out to sign as I stepped back to give him room. Nothing. I told him I'm deaf and I don't understand what he's saying to me, so if he has something important to say, he needs to open the door so I can read his lips. I'm still trying to be as polite as I can be because this is a half-hour round trip and I needed that tip. He still won't come out, and after almost 10 minutes of nearly begging this guy to come out, he refuses. So I let him know I'm returning to my car with his order because he's not coming out. I gather everything and return to my car and contact my manager, asking her what to do in this situation, as he isn't coming to the door, has not tipped, and I don't know what he's trying to tell me. As it turns out, as I was texting my manager, the customer had called her and complained about a driver pretending to be deaf and refusing to just leave the food and buzz off. Turns out every time he spoke to me, it was to just go away, becoming increasingly aggressive about it. I could understand that his voice was coming aggressive, but again, I had no idea what he was saying, so I stayed. My wonderful manager immediately sides with the customer, telling me to just leave the food at the door and forget the tip, at least having the courtesy of reciting every insult and accusation this customer is hurling about me to my manager, even saying that the guy has proof of me lying about being deaf because I can speak clearly. Manager knows my story and my level of deafness, but instead of explaining why the accusations are wrong, she just sides with him. I end up leaving the order with no tip, wasting almost 50 minutes with zero pay at all for it. I got chewed out by my manager for my disability, and how this mess she's dealing with is all of my fault. I couldn't even defend myself because I'm pretty sure my disability and needed accommodations are very much not my fault. I tried speaking with the GM the next day about the issue to get his input and figure out what exactly went wrong so this won't happen again. But as I explained the situation from my point of view, he immediately brushed me off, saying the customer paid for the food and he can do whatever he wants after that. I'm furious because of this, and I'm tempted to either quit or get the ADA involved because of this issue, but I don't want to as well because of the timing, and I can't afford bills without this job. Due to people asking why I pushed for the signature / assuming why, I'll just put it up here one more time. I was not trying to guilt him into tipping me. I was not harassing the guy into coming out to give me money. It is a legality reason and nothing more. The point of signing an untipped invoice is to state that the invoiced amount is all they intend on paying, or they intend to pay a little more than that, which goes to the driver. Due to a string of tip fraud issues in my area, our store has cracked down on having a signed receipt so we can't add fraudulent tips. Management has made it very, very clear that at their discretion, drivers can be suspended or even fired for not coming back with a signature, tip, or no tip. Entitled Mom complains about not being able to take her toddler on a 300-foot-tall roller coaster. For context, I am a big coaster enthusiast, and I've been following coasters since I was like 4 years old. I love going to Hershey Park and Six Flags New England when I was a kid. Still love going there. In 2016, I visited the roller coaster capital of the world, Cedar Point. It was an awesome trip, and I got to ride a lot of great coasters. My favorite was Maverick. However, this experience was a doozy. One of the largest coasters at the park is Millennium Force. It's a whopping 310 feet tall and hits speeds of 93 miles per hour. With a coaster as extreme as this, you would think twice about trying to bring your kid on it, right? Well, we've got Entitled Mom, we've got our younger kid, we've got our older kid, we've got Poor Employee, and we've got the Annoyed Stranger. Now to this story. It was our second day at the park, and we were heading over to Millennium Force. I was very nervous to ride it for the first time. We got to the beautiful Millennium Force ride sign. While we were admiring the coaster, I noticed something going on by the entrance where the employee was checking height. I could see a woman with 2 kids on her sides. One looked about 9, the older one, and the other looked no older than 4. I thought it was a bit strange, but I didn't think much of it until I heard this. Entitled Mom: "Why can't my kid come on?" Employee: "I'm sorry, but your kid is nowhere near the height requirement."
He was going to sit on my lap, so it will be fine. Stop being such a control freak.
I thought to myself, control freak? Oh, this is gonna be good. Shorter kid: "Mommy, that ride looks really scary." Entitled Mom:
"Oh, it isn't that bad. Mommy will get you on it."
Employee: "I'm sorry, but this goes against all of our safety protocols."
How dare you keep my kid from riding this? He's wanted to ride this all day, and you are not gonna stop him."
Older kid: "Mom, he has been saying all day about how it's too scary."
Shut up, will you?
Poor Employee: "Look, older kid is tall enough so I can let him through, but I can't let your other kid on the ride."
No, no, no.
She tried shoving past this guy, but he wasn't budging. You know how tall and fast this ride is, right?
Yes, I'm not blind, you jerk.
Annoyed Stranger:
"Can you please shut up?"
I turned around to see a guy who looked like he was in his 30s coming towards the Entitled Mom. Annoyed Stranger:
"If your kid isn't tall enough, that's too bad." How dare you speak to me like that? You have no idea what it's like to be a single mother of 2 kids. He has always wanted to ride this ride, and you are not going to stop him.
The kid looked terrified just looking at the thing. Annoyed Stranger:
"Look at him. He looks like he's about to pass out." You shut your mouth.
While all this was happening, the woman at the photo booth had called security, and let's just say she got a quick trip out of the park. I ended up talking with Annoyed Stranger. He was chill and talked about how he knew how to deal with Karens from experience. I just felt bad for the poor employee, who probably has to put up with this crap on a daily basis. Moral of the story: entitled parents plus height requirement equals ear torture. I learned later that she tried pulling the same thing at Valraven too. Security warned her if it happened again, she would get kicked out. This was before the Millennium Force incident, so security definitely kept their promise. No, Karen, I cannot help you go to the bathroom. In high school, I worked for a national movie theater chain. While they've since changed them, the uniform at the time consisted of navy blue trousers and a red polo. Nearby, in the same plaza, there were several restaurants and fast food places. Among these was a Panda Express. During my 15-minute break, I'd been at Panda and in line ordering and waiting to pay for my food. I was minding my own business and hoping that I could get out of there quickly enough to have time to inhale my orange chicken prior to darting back to the box office when my break ended. I'm a bit zoned out, so I become rather startled upon hearing an abrupt ahem, accompanied by a tap on my shoulder. I turned and took in the sight of what we all know now to be a Karen. Me: "Oh, sorry, was I in your way?" This is my default line of thinking, and I have terrible social anxiety. Karen:
"I said I need to go to the bathroom."
Me, pointing: Well, it's over that way, I think."
"I know that, obviously."
Me, confused at this point, because I'm not at all in the way of her getting to the bathroom, and now she's admitted to knowing where it is. I don't know what Karen starts shouting.
I need the key.
At this point, it's time for me to pay for my food. Remember, I'm on the outside of the glass/counter and waiting in a line. I figure maybe she's trying to get past me to ask the cashier for the bathroom key, so I step back and make room for her to go ahead of me. She doesn't. Karen.
I asked you for the bathroom key. Do you not know how to do your job?
I finally realize that she thinks I'm employed there. I guess maybe it's because my work shirt is red and so are the employee uniforms there. Me, awkwardly pointing at the cinema logo on my polo. I'm just on my break. She must not have looked at the gestures I'd made to the uniform of the company I'm actually employed by. Karen.
Is this your manager?
Turns to the cashier.
Your employee is so rude. Just because she's on her break, she's refusing to help me go to the bathroom. She needs to be fired.
Cashier. Ma'am, she doesn't work here. Will you be purchasing a meal? Our restrooms are for customers only. Karen sputters, then turns and storms out of the place to terrorize some other establishment with a public restroom. They totally allowed people to use the restrooms without buying food, by the way. I think they just wanted to have her leave the store because of the scene she had just made. Entitled mom calls the cops when I wouldn't give any steak to her son. This happened maybe about a year ago. The weather had been nice and I had just gotten some sirloin steaks. I haven't used my grill since the previous year, so I decided now would be a good time to try it out. For a few days, a group of construction workers had been busy working on a new house. It's built now, and it's pretty nice. Way too expensive for me though. But it had been hot and/or rainy almost the entire duration of the build, and they were working their butts off the whole way through. So I decided to be nice, and after going over to the site, I yelled for them to come get some free food when they went on break. They were incredibly grateful. There were about 5 workers present, and 4 of them showed up for the steak while the others passed. I had enough for everyone, including one for me, and we had a nice time chatting and getting to know one another. One was a veteran of the Marines back in the early 80s. He's friends with my grandma now. One was even related to the sheriff of our county. Anyway, amid the conversation, we heard an "Excuse me" from the other side of the fence. My neighbor is this middle-aged woman with a super weird son. He was this influencer who loved to go on social media and post about weird hobbies and lived off his mother's paycheck every week while living on her couch. He was also in his mid-30s. There she was on the other side of the fence. We've got entitled mom, we've got the grown kid, we've got construction workers 1 and 2, and the police officer. Entitled mom.
My son was wondering if he can have some steak too.
Me. Sorry, I don't have any left.
But you have enough for all of them.
Yeah, I do. If he wanted some, he should have came earlier.
No, you should have bought enough for everyone.
Construction worker 1. Look, lady, this guy was nice enough to cook steak.
Don't you have work you should be doing?
Worker 2. We're on lunch, ma'am. She soon left in a huff, but not before shouting that she was calling the police. I was the only one who heard that, I think. So I asked the relative of the sheriff if there was really anything the police would arrest me for. Of course, he said no. In his words, there are no laws against not sharing. I asked if we should tell her that, and he again said no. Again, in his words, it would be the most fun they've had on the job ever since they started building that dang house. Note, I actually did have an extra steak. I was just saving it for later. Sure enough, after the construction workers went back to the site, who's to show up but a police officer? No lights, so it's a non-emergency, but he parked right outside entitled mom's house. Both her and her kid walked out and greet the officer. I walked out on my own lawn, and entitled mom pointed straight at me. I can't quite remember everything said here, but she was accusing me of discrimination because I left her 30-ish-year-old son out of our little steak party. I swear, it was like a kindergarten lunch. Officer obviously shook it off, warned her to not get the police involved in something so ridiculous again, and started to leave. But I said, "Wait, officer, are you hungry?" Officer, "Well, I haven't had lunch yet. Why?" Me, "May I offer you a steak?"
I knew it. You do have more steak. I demand you give it to my son now.
Officer, "And I demand you go back into your house before I arrest you for disturbing the peace and possibly harassment."
But you can't do that. He can't do that. Tell him, son.
Her kid, I just wanted some steak." Entitled mom,
Officer, you have to do something about this. This man is performing a crime against my son.
We both actually laughed. Officer said something along the lines of, "Have a good day," and I led him into my backyard. I had to give him the steak raw since he had to go back on his patrol, but we had a good laugh. Entitled Mom and her kid finally went back into their house, and every time that I see them nowadays, she scowls at me, while her kid just pays no attention. I occasionally see that same officer from time to time, and every time I see him, he asks me the same thing. Did you remember to share today? Get your brats away from those ducklings before I do. This happened when I was in a quaint country pub garden in the east of England. The place is stunning countryside dotted with local pubs. Everyone knows who is a local. Every summer, the pubs are filled with rude, disgusting people and their brats. Story time. I had been out in the lovely flowered pub garden a few times already as I was drinking beers on a gorgeous Sunday afternoon with friends. Every time I went out, I was thrilled to see this lovely white mother duck tending to her baby ducklings. There were about 7 of them, and the pub staff explained that this mom duck comes back each day to get food from the staff members and to chill in the sun with her fluffy ducklings. I am back in the pub with mates when an entitled mom and her 4 snotty, loud, disgusting brats enter. They proceed to make loads of noise and generally ruin the vibes. We ignore them. After a while, I walk outside for my final smoke, and I'm followed by entitled mom and her brats. It turns out entitled mom smokes too. We ignore each other, and immediately her brats spot the mother duck and her babies. They all squeal and run over to the birds. To be honest, they were so loud, I looked at the mom, already expecting her to say something reasonable like, "Calm down, guys, you don't want to scare the babies." But instead, she just watched her brats fondly. I watched the mother duck panic and try to usher her babies away from the entitled kids, but they all ran up and surrounded the birds, trapping them all in a corner by the wall. They then proceed to start grabbing at the ducklings and roughly trying to pick them up. The mother duck and her babies start to quack in panic. Outraged, I look at entitled mom and see she's still smiling at her brats as if this is the sweetest thing in the world. So I turn back to the entitled kids and shout, "Don't touch the ducklings! Just look at them!" Entitled mom turns to me with an angry face and says, "How dare you speak to my kids like that? They aren't doing any harm." I look back to see all the entitled kids still grabbing at the ducklings and distressing the mom. One of the entitled kids is even picking up a baby duckling by its wing. I scream, "Put those ducklings down now, you little jerks!" The mom turns to me with a death stare and starts to say, "If you talk to my babies like that again..." At this point, I look at her with an even deadlier stare, and I say in a shaking voice, "That duck is a mother too, and if you don't do something, I will." The mother looks at me like she's gonna argue, but saw that I wasn't kidding. She shouted her brats over and stormed inside. I watched the ducks leave the garden looking panicked. When I got back to my table, my mate said the woman was making a complaint about me to the bar staff. They came over and said the entitled mom told them that I threatened them. I told them her entitled kids were grabbing the ducklings, and I politely asked them to stop. I denied the threat. They asked entitled mom whether her brats had grabbed the ducklings, and she said, "They only wanted to hold them. They wouldn't hurt a fly." The bar staff told her and her brats to leave, and when she kicked up a fuss, they said, "Those ducks are locals, lady. Buzz off." Entitled mom yanks off my beanie, revealing my bald head to her entire family. This story includes G, my good friend, entitled mom, my friend's entitled mom, and me. So I struggle with this disorder where you use hair pulling as a coping mechanism when things get stressful in life. At the time this happened, I was almost completely bald because of it. I had patches of wiry, regrowing hair and some completely bald patches. It was not a pretty sight, and I wore a beanie 24/7 to cover it up. Luckily, I had really supportive and understanding friends who did so much to cheer me up on a daily basis. So my friend G invited me around to her house for dinner one night. I had known her family since primary school, so I was aware of her mom's strict dinner table policies. They were pretty acceptable. No coats, hats, elbows on the table, etc. But I figured my friend had explained my situation to her and she would understand. This was definitely not the case. She was visibly uncomfortable with me wearing the beanie as we sat down to eat. Entitled mom, "Would you mind taking off your hat at the dinner table?" Me, immediately uncomfortable, considering how to explain the situation in front of G's younger brother. G, "Mom, it's okay, just leave it." Entitled mom snaps, "Don't talk back to me like that. This is my dinner table, and I don't allow outdoor clothes during meal times." Me, Entitled Mom, I'm really sorry, but I'd prefer to keep it on for personal reasons. Entitled Mom gets up.
This is ridiculous. Just take off the hat.
When I didn't budge, she grabbed the top of my beanie and started to pull it off. My hands darted to my head, trying to resist. She went to make a comment about me being childish, but promptly shuts up as soon as she revealed my battered, patchy, and bald head. Her mouth kind of hung open for a second or two as the rest of the table stayed silent. G, bless her, was furious with her entitled mom, yanked my precious beanie from her hands, and quickly rushed me away from the table. Nothing much happened after this incident. My friend was really apologetic for her mom, and I was honestly too shocked and embarrassed to know what to say. She discreetly let me out of the house because I wasn't comfortable in that environment anymore. Later on, I know that my mom had a discussion with her. I don't want to get into a whole other story with this, but entitled mom started to exercise her gossipy Karen nature around the other parents. In the end, she did give me an apology. It was awkward, but I accepted it. It wasn't Karen, it was me. Just a little background. I conked my head pretty hard on an F-18 fighter jet back in the Navy. I currently have some mild memory problems and kind of go into phases where I'm awake, but I can't really tell what I'm doing. It's an odd sensation when I'm tired or didn't eat well. I just go into this phase where I'm physically competent. I could juggle knives and tightrope, but not tell you how many fingers you're holding up or repeat your name when you tell me to my face. All this being said, it wasn't nearly that bad, which makes me feel terrible. You see, I'm 6 foot 7 inches tall. I wear my hair very short, so the massive jagged scar on my head is very visible. Until people hear me talk, they usually shuffle away from me and hold their purses, kids, or whatever closer, and try to stand near someone else. It's a little offensive, but I can't blame them. Books and covers and all, but I do look like a bad guy. Now, this story is simple. I was running out of food in my fridge, and I just got off a 12-hour shift. I didn't need much. It might sound gross, but a super easy fast food is hummus and hot dogs. If you get the higher quality hot dogs, slather on some hummus and a line of mustard. It's great, but still clearly bachelor food. So I go to this place that sells bulk food, mostly for mom and pop restaurants or big church events, that kind of stuff. I go there because you can get these great hot dog buns, $3 for a 24 pack. Then you get like half a gallon of really good hummus for 15 bucks. It's great, but I almost instantly made a horrible mistake. I came in, and just 20 feet in and to my left is the bread and the buns. I come in and notice a woman. It's been a long day and I'm very hungry, so I only vaguely notice she's wearing mild business attire, just like the employees, and some sort of blue apron, just like the employees. And to top it all off, she's in front of the hot dog buns, shuffling buns off of her cart and onto the shelf. I walk up and grab the last bag of hot dog buns on her cart and loudly, playfully announce, "Yoink!" She turns around and stares at me as if I just stole her purse. Something triggers inside me, and I know something's wrong. I'm still trying to keep up my happy tone, despite how tired I am, and it takes me a full 5 seconds of this poor woman staring at me, worried and almost shivering when I finally notice. Her cart has eggs, milk, frozen items, energy drinks, and a few other various items in smaller amounts, and her purse is on the cart, and the apron is actually a blue stripe on her shirt. I nearly break down apologizing, carefully placing her hot dog buns on the cart and keep apologizing. Thankfully, she either was nice or realized how upset I had made myself with this mistake and finally has to all but grab either side of my face and say it was fine right into my eyes. I still felt horrible. I'm huge and I have to be so darn careful not to hurt people just going about my daily life. And I hate scaring innocent people. I can be mean when I need to, but I really hate being the bad guy. I got my buns and my hummus, still looking down and barely even paying attention to the world around me, letting the embarrassment and pain grind away at me when all of a sudden I hear a playful voice say, "Yoink!" And suddenly my hummus is gone. I look over to see the woman smiling and laughing before she hands it back and tells me, "Don't tear yourself up. It was an honest mistake and you handled it really well." I still tear myself up about it, but it was a big step in the path of feeling better. Got screamed at today by Karen over an avocado. I'm full of bitter fury, so if you're a vindictive person, you may enjoy this. Little backstory. I work for a gourmet burger place. Everyone who works during this has seen the inner jerkness of the general public grow and grow. We've been slammed and understaffed because 3/4 of our staff decided to quit when this all went down, and every 10 minutes our phone rings with some dumb jerk asking, "Are you guys open? What time do you close tonight? Can I order?" Random thing not currently offered. First of all, Google answers every question you ask. Just Google the restaurant. Our menu is on the website. Our website is on Google. So anyways, after having the phone ring with the same crap every 5 to 10 minutes at least, and often having 3 or 4 calls come in at the exact same time, my phone customer service voice is slipping. I'm not rude, but I don't have the patience anymore to be all chipper and peppy over the phone. Today I get a call from a guest. Let's call her Jerk. So Jerk calls and asks to order. I politely direct Jerk to the online ordering platform because it will let you know what our new menu is, and we've been very busy, so it will help us get your order out more quickly. Jerk says she can't put blue cheese on her burger. I tell Jerk, I'm sorry ma'am, we don't have blue cheese right now. Anything you can't find online, we don't have. Jerk says, well, I wanted guacamole on my burger, but that button isn't there either. Quick separate thought. Guacamole and avocado are 2 different things. I've worked as a server for years. You give somebody avocado when they ask for guacamole, and a crappy person will not hesitate to mess up your day with their poor social etiquette. So anyways, I begin to say to Jerk, we actually don't sell guacamole, ma'am. We did for a while, but only for 1 month as a special, but we do not have avocado. I only get as far as ma'am. So she cuts me off and says, I've seen burgers with guacamole or avocado or whatever that stuff is called. So I responded to her, completely ignoring that I was interrupted because what else is new? Oh, avocado. Yes, ma'am, we do have that. If you don't see that online, it's an issue. I'm so sorry. I'll go ahead and take your order. Once again, cutting me off, she says, why would you split hairs between avocado and guacamole? Are you stupid? I respond, well, guacamole and avocado aren't technically the same thing. And third interruption in a row, this jerk screams at the top of her lungs through the phone, don't you be a jerk to me. I say for the first time, not trying to hide my irritation, don't yell at me. I've done nothing to deserve that. She yells some more about how they're the same thing. I explain, if you asked for guacamole and I gave you avocado and you were upset by it, it could cause me to get an unnecessary, uncomfortable situation. And then, showing her truly undeniable stupidity and lack of self-awareness, she retorts, what are you talking about? Who would get upset with someone over avocado? At this point, my voice is flat and clearly upset, but I'm still not being snarky or rude, just abrupt. I retort, people yell at food service workers about all kinds of things. Karen says, clearly you've had a hard day. I respond, it was fine until a minute ago. What can I get you? The rest of her ordering process, she's very quiet and much more respectful. I hope I broke her. I hope that realizing how mean she was, she broke down crying. I hope her husband leaves her and her kids don't call. Just to be clear, I don't actually have a legitimate problem with people calling and asking what time we close or if we're open. I know times are crazy. It just gets kind of annoying due to how often it happens, but I just wanted to get my frustrations off my chest. Mistaken for a caterer at my own wedding party. My wedding party was very informal. We wore sports jerseys. A lot of family and friends of family came, including a batch of people that I didn't even know, which got a little weird because we still only personally invited everyone and told everyone to let us know if they have a +1 and it would be fine for us to invite them. This is so we could track catering expenses and space concerns. It was a rough day and I was very limited in support and was taking care of most setup and issues myself in a party of roughly 80 people. It felt more like work than a party. The time finally came where I could rest when issues were taken care of, about halfway through the party. The sun was beginning to set. I sat down in the corner and wiped the sweat off my face and looked over at the food. Everyone had eaten except me, so I was ready to finally dive into the food that I paid for. Some woman I've never met in her late 20s asked me to bring a plate for her kids. Me, I'm sorry ma'am, I want to bring some stuff for my wife and start eating myself. Lady, oh, caterers can bring their families to events like this? Me, somewhat confused at her response. The caterers here are a family business, so sort of. Isn't it inappropriate for you to eat food someone else paid for? Me, confused even further, but giving a chuckle. I paid for it. I'm sorry, who did you come here with? Lady. Oh, really? You must be the party planner. Are you a friend of the groom's? I was invited by the groom. Me, chuckling again. No, I'm the groom. Oh, I'm sorry. How embarrassing. You're the groom. Hey, nice to meet you. I sent invitations by name, but we also requested feedback for the plus invitations. I don't believe I sent you an invitation. I think everyone invited more people than we initially wanted.
Oh, okay. Am I and my kids okay to be here? I'm actually sister's friend's friend. They said it was okay.
Oh yes, that'll be perfectly fine. We have much more food than I had thought. It won't be an issue. Nice to meet you. I came to the table with my wife and her grandmother, and we finally ate. My wife to me. Dang girl, you flirting with all the ladies at our wedding party or what? I know that a +1 of a +1 that was uninvited is generally uncool, but there was no need to stress it. Everyone had a good time, and there was actually too much food. Sitting at computer store actually was good advertising. A bit of context. Since a few years, I've been learning about building PCs and built some. I also like to help newbies to gaming choosing components and building their first machines. Sometimes they pay me some, or give me a bar of chocolate or something. I was still younger at the time, and I was a ceremony master in an academy at my school, so I was in a suit with a tie. After it ended, I was waiting for my friend to end his classes, so I went to some computer store, which dress code was also suits without ties. So I was walking around, mostly thinking, I saw that CPU $10 cheaper on the internet, and came to pre-builds, which are really not the best there, like putting good CPUs and motherboards that don't allow you to modify the computer in any way, so you would most likely spend much more money on upgrades and etc. After some time, a lady came in with a 14-year-old kid and began looking on those pre-builds. As soon as I saw it, I wanted to help them because they could get much better PCs at the same price, but I'm kind of an introvert. Most likely, I'm unable to start the conversation with strangers, so I just moved to the next one. But after some while, they approached me. Lady:
Excuse me, could you help us choosing a good computer for my son?
Me: Of course. What would it be used for? As I said, they have to break this stranger barrier. I can speak normally now. It's strange. Lady:
Well, learning, of course.
I saw them looking at computers about $1,000 to $1,500, so certainly not the case. Mostly, kid talked her into more expensive ones. Me: Would you like to play any games too? If yes, which ones? Kid: Yes, I like to play these games. I saw that PC has good components for it. Me: Not all. I suggest you ask someone who works here about more specific parameters. Lady:
So you don't work here?
Her cheeks turned kind of pink, probably got a little embarrassed. Me: No, I don't. However, if you would like, I can build a computer at a much better price than those ones. Here's my number. In the end, I built him a much better computer than what the shop offered and earned $20, which I didn't ask for, so happy ending, even though the story might not be as interesting. Edit: I did steal that one customer from the store, but in most of my builds, I use some parts from them. Usually they have good prices for CPUs and GPUs, so I'm even getting them some money. They wouldn't mind not selling one pre-build.
Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.